Chapter 412. What are you planning to do? A voice suddenly sounded from the side. Huang Qian'er looked at Wang Chong warily. She had been by Wang Chang's side all this time, so she had heard the conversation between Wang Chong and the eagle loud and clear. He, I'm just doing what I should. Wang Chong sat on his horse and replied calmly. Seeing the disciples of the Zhang clan approaching from afar, he hurriedly beckoned them over. You aren't a match for him. You saw that imperial guard too. His cultivation was higher than yours, but he still died at the hands of that Uzun first prince. Huang Qian'er was extremely wary of Wang Chang's actions. Her mission was to ensure Wang Chang's safety, not to send him to his death. That person isn't someone you can deal with. You underestimate me too much. Wang Chong grinned as he leisurely and unhurriedly took off his robe. At the same time, he indicated for the Zhang clan disciples to open the chest and hand over the deep-sea Xian metal upper body armor to him. The Zhang clan had indeed put a lot of effort into this armor. As Wang Chong weighed it in his hand, he immediately felt his hands sink, as if it weighed more than 100 jin. Be it in terms of shape or sturdiness, the armor looked extremely powerful. It felt like a miniature fortress. Wang Chong raised the armor above his head and quickly put it on. An exceptionally comfortable feeling came from his body, like a fish in the water or a bird in the forest. It was a perfect fit. Since I'm prepared to go on stage, it means that I'm confident in my chances of victory. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this. Furthermore, if I don't go on stage, are you prepared to take my place? Wang Chong turned to look at Huang Qian'er, a faint smile on his face. Huang Qian'er opened her mouth, but just as she was about to speak, she hesitated. There were so many people present, and so many experts, but no one made a move. This was not without reason. Defeating this Yusang first prince was not difficult, but the problem was that if they accidentally injured him or killed him, it would incite a war between the two countries. No one present would be able to bear the consequences of such a thing. The reason why Huang Qian'er was at Wang Chang's side was to ensure the safety of the Huang clan, not to kill a prince and bring disaster upon the Huang clan. That's it. Wang Chong smiled faintly. He quickly took the other helmet from the Zhang clan's disciple and put it on his head. Boom! Right at this moment, an earth-shattering roar suddenly came from the center of the crowd, and the originally quiet practice field suddenly boiled up again. Let's go in and have a look. Wang Chang's expression changed. Without thinking, he immediately spurred his horse into the training field. Flashing his token, Wang Chang's group successfully squeezed in. Sweeping his gaze across the surroundings, Wang Chong suddenly soared into the air and landed on the roof of a nearby building. From his vantage point, Wang Chong could clearly see what was going on in the practice ground. Wang Chong's intuition was right. In the end, there was still someone who could no longer hold back his anger and charged into the training field. Come! Foreign barbarians, today, I'll let you know the prowess of the Central Plains. On the massive training field, a furious voice reverberated in the air. Galloping, Wang Chong could see a fully armored young man wielding a large spear. He was currently charging at the Tibetan crown prince, his horse stirring up a thick plume of smoke as he thrusted it toward the Tibetan crown prince. His aura was unstoppable, as though he was unstoppable. But in the next moment, the crowd broke into an uproar, and an infuriating sight occurred. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a figure galloped forward. The first prince of Uzun didn't dodge. Instead, he charged straight at the tip of the spear of the scion, as though he was courting death. Bastard! The scion was taken aback. His goal was to teach the first prince of Uzun a lesson, not to kill him. In the blink of an eye, he pulled on the reins of his horse and charged to the side. Neigh! The war steed neighed, and its 4 legs seemed to have stiffened as it charged forward. Chi! There was a flash of blood. Before the scion could do anything, his chest was struck by a saber, and blood spurted out. Despicable, shameless. He's using this move again. What kind of ability is this to use such shameless methods? Do these Uzun barbarians even know the rules? He's doing this because he knows that we don't dare to hurt him. That bastard. To think that the great first prince of Uzun would be like this. In the training field, everyone was furious when they saw this scene. In a war between two countries, the weak are prey to the strong, and the winner is king. That's how it is between countries, and it should be the same in a contest of martial arts. What do you mean by stopping when the time is right? Benevolence, righteousness, propriety, and wisdom. It's ridiculous for the Central Plains to have such a rule. I didn't ask you to give way to me. Who can you blame if you want to do this? On the other side, the first prince of Uzun turned his horse around. Listening to the crowd's furious curses, he sneered in his heart, but he didn't care. He wasn't a member of the Tang dynasty, so it didn't matter if he was cursed by foreigners. He wouldn't lose a strand of skin anyway. Come on. Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. With his eyes fixed on the scion in the distance, the first prince of Uzun smiled sinisterly. He urged his highland steed to attack. But just like before, the first prince of Uzun left himself wide open. He attacked with all his might, not caring about defense at all. In an instant, the expression of the young man who looked like a descendant of an aristocratic family turned extremely ugly. Do you still think that I can't kill him? Wang Chong, who was clinging to the edge of the building, spoke without turning his head, the sound of clothes rustling through the air accompanied by an alluring fragrance. This person can't be touched. Don't you see that there are so many people standing there? It's not that we can't deal with him, but that we can't touch him. Even if your Wang clan is a clan of ministers and generals, even if your grandfather's name is known throughout the world, the consequences aren't something your Wang clan can bear. Huang Qian'er said with a cold expression. Not too long after Wang Chong flew over, she attached herself to him as well. Ha! That's because you know too little about me. Don't you know? The more unkillable a person is, the more I like to kill him. Wang Chong looked at the highland steed in the training field, a mocking smile on his lips, as if he was looking at a person who was about to die. What a clever strategy. Wang Chong watched as the Uzun first prince used his body as a shield and charged forward, completely disregarding his own life. Wang Chong couldn't help but sneer coldly. A duel of martial arts was a battle of life and death. Why would there be so many rules? In this aspect, he actually quite admired this Uzun first prince. But while this method of using one's body to threaten others might work, it was completely useless against him. So, loosening his grip, Wang Chong quickly jumped down from the building and landed back on his steed. The battle was already over, and on the training field, the scion was already in dire straits. His body was riddled with wounds, and his death was inevitable. It's my turn. Wang Chong urged his steed forward. Wait a moment, Huang Qian'er jumped down from the building and was just about to stop Wang Chong when the eagle stopped her. Young miss, don't worry. Gongzi has a clear goal in his actions, and he would never do something that he isn't confident of. Naturally, he has his reasons for making a move. I hope that young miss can maintain her trust in Gongzi. The eagle said solemnly. The operation of the Goguryeo assassins had already forged the eagle's absolute trust in Wang Chong. Furthermore, the eagle's trust wasn't that blind either. Wang Chong was wearing a deep-sea Xian metal armor that was the bane of master archers, and there were a large number of toughening inscriptions inscribed on it. Even a full-powered arrow from a master archer wouldn't be able to pierce through it, needless to say, the swords and sabers of the Uzun. On top of that, the eagle wasn't a foolhardy individual either. He had already mobilized a master archer outside to await his orders. If anything were to happen, Wang Chong's deep-sea Xian metal armor and the master archer's arrows would be more than enough to save him. On the training ground, Li Chen had never imagined that he would exhaust his stamina to such an extent in just a few short exchanges. Large beads of sweat dripped down from his forehead, nose bridge, and chin. Salty sweat seeped into his eyes, blurring his vision. The small spear in his hand felt unprecedentedly heavy. The pungent scent of blood wafted into his nose. Li Qin knew that this blood was all his. Bastard! Li Qin clenched his teeth and cursed in his heart. He suddenly felt a tinge of regret. Not for his arrogance, but for underestimating the other party's shamelessness. In the past few days of challenges, the other party had grasped the mentality of the crowd, and he had grasped the advantage of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. He had been using his body to block, to knock, to stick, to snatch. In any case, he was using all sorts of self-harming methods to make Li Qin hesitate. On the other hand, he was using his full strength, resorting to all means. This wasn't a fair fight. Li Qin also knew that he couldn't hold on for much longer. What flowed out of his body was not only his blood, but also his stamina and stellar energy. Li Qin wanted to end this, but with so many people watching, he couldn't easily back down. Moreover, his strong pride wouldn't allow him to do so. Enough. Go down. Just as Li Qin was feeling extremely tormented and finding it hard to persevere, a voice suddenly came from the crowd. With the clatter of hooves, a fully armored figure suddenly spurred his horse out from the crowd. Wang Chong dismounted from his white-hoofed shadow. Clad in deep-sea Xian metal armor, he was armed to the teeth. Wielding the silver spear made from Wuzi steel, he slowly spurred his horse towards the training ground. Bzzz. In that instant, the huge training field suddenly quietened down. After Wang Chong appeared, everyone simultaneously let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 413. Ha! On the other side, the first prince of Uzan sneered. The battle was already nearing its end. He was about to enjoy the joy of victory. How could he be disturbed by a single person's words? Nay! The war horse neighed. The first prince of Uzan became one with his horse, turning into a cloud of dust as he charged straight at Li Qin. Humph! Wang Chong sneered, as if he had already expected this. He straightened his right hand. Boom! The next moment, it was as if a clap of thunder had streaked across the sky. A thick iron arrow streaked across half of the training ground, brushing past the first prince of Uzan's horse and stabbing into the ground. Nei's Highland steed neighed and reared. On its back, the first prince of Uzan had an extremely ugly expression. Bastard! Before the first prince of Uzan could launch an attack, an angry roar suddenly erupted from the golden-roofed building at the edge of the training ground. Wang Chong's arrow had not injured the first prince of Uzan, but it had angered the official from the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Where did this bastard come from? Did you not understand what I said? Do not harm Prince Uzan. Do not harm Prince Uzan. Are you deaf? If a member of the diplomatic mission is injured, it will cause a dispute between the two countries. Which bastard are you from? Are you ignoring the words of the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies? The official from the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies was furious. They had already warned him time and time again, and had even sent imperial soldiers to stand guard here. Who would have thought that someone would not listen to them? Guards! Hurry and take him away. At the edge of the railing, the official stretched out his index finger and pointed at Wang Chong. His face was ashen as he shouted. The crowd at the edge of the training ground was in an uproar. Several imperial soldiers immediately rushed towards Wang Chong. On the other side, the first prince of Uzan also had an ugly expression. That arrow just now had not been merciful. Had it not been for his quick reaction, he would have been shot. Sharpshooter! The eldest prince of Uzan turned his head abruptly and glared fiercely at Wang Chong, who was standing at the edge of the training field. His hatred was instantly attracted to Wang Chong. At the same time, everyone in the training field was attracted by Wang Chong. I've said it before, this battle is over. Even if you pretend not to understand. Then I'll say it again. Didn't Uzan want to meet the young elites of the Chinese server and find someone who can defeat you? Then you have got your wish. The people of Uzan have always advocated martial prowess. Don't tell me they only have this little ability and only know how to bully the weak. Wang Chong urged his horse forward calmly. His first sentence was in the language of the Central Plains, but the next sentence was in the language of Uzan. Buzz. When Wang Chong spoke a string of fluent words in Uzan, the furious Uzan first prince and even the Uzan great general Dusong Mangpoj and the other Uzan warriors paled in fright. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains regarded the Uzan as barbarians and treated them with disdain, so no one would ever learn the language of Uzan. Other than the few people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, this was the first time they had encountered someone who could speak the language of Uzan in the Central Plains. This was not a very good feeling. Moreover, this meant that they could no longer use the language of Uzan in front of these people of the Tang dynasty. Who are you? Why do you speak the language of our Uzan? The Uzan first prince narrowed his eyes and finally turned around. He was far more interested in this fully armored knight of the Tang dynasty than anyone else. In fact, he was even more interested in killing the scion of the great Tang who had already lost the ability to fight back. Moreover, even if you want to go up, that's fine. You should know the rules of our competition. Only those under the age of 26 have the right to participate in this challenge. The Tang dynasty of the Central Plains is said to be a land of heroes, a gathering of heroes. They shouldn't even need to cheat in this sort of challenge. The Uzan first prince had a proud expression, but his eyes glimmered with a cunning light. What are you standing around for? Hurry up and capture him. A harsh voice rang out in his ear as footsteps rumbled behind him. Several powerful auras were rapidly approaching. Wang Chong chuckled. Without even turning his head, his hand shook, and a dazzling token flew out and landed in front of two imperial soldiers. Looking at the lifelike dragon on the token, the imperial army soldiers shuddered and came to an abrupt halt. Ha ha ha, didn't you want to know who I am? As you wish, I'll tell you. Wang Chong looked at the Uzan first prince, his eyes sharp and perceptive. He already knew what the Uzan first prince was thinking. His right hand grabbed the edge of his helmet and forcefully put it on. His long black hair fell down, revealing the face of a fair-skinned, handsome youth beneath the sturdy armor. Ah! Seeing this extraordinarily young face, a burst of soft exclamations suddenly came from all around. In the building at the edge of the practice field, an official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, who had been sitting calmly and motionlessly like Mount Tai, suddenly sat up. His entire body seemed to have been shocked by electricity, and his expression abruptly changed. It's him. At this moment, he finally recognized the person who had suddenly appeared on the practice field to stir up trouble. If there was one person in the Chamberlain of Dependencies who was most disliked and unwelcomed, then it was undoubtedly this youth. Whether it was the regional commander's incident or the Goguryeo assassins, Wang Chong's every action had easily nullified the efforts of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. The Wang clan had obtained the honor and reputation they wanted, but in order to make up for the unease they had caused in the capital, the Chamberlain of Dependencies had expended a great deal of energy and money to appease the envoys of the other countries and the Hu and foreigners in the capital. They had to convince them that this was just a coincidence and that the empire's policies toward the other countries would not change. Without question, everyone in the Chamberlain of Dependencies agreed that the most unwelcome person was the youngest son of the Wang clan. Bastard! Didn't I tell them? We can't let this young master of the Wang clan get close. How did he manage to sneak in? The veins on the forehead of the authoritative official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies were throbbing. He suddenly had an ill foreboding. The matter at the practice field was about to get out of hand. Wherever this young master of the Wang clan appeared, it would always be a mess. Stop him. No matter what, we can't let him injure the first prince of Uzan. The official said as he pinched his forehead. Milord, I'm afraid that it's already too late. An expert of the Chamberlain of Dependencies said as he watched the two approaching figures, his face fraught with worry. Neither the people of Uzan nor that brat will agree with us. Moreover, that Wang Chong still has the token of the King of Song. These last words struck at the Achilles heel of that imposing figure. Like a punctured rubber ball, he slumped back into his seat in disappointment. The token of the King of Song. It was like a mighty wall, blocking all his thoughts. There's no need to worry. The mighty Tang dynasty doesn't need to send anyone formidable to deal with you. Sending me alone is enough. Wang Chong didn't know that an official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies was watching him from a building at the edge. As he spoke, Wang Chong put on his deep-sea Xian iron helmet, revealing only his eyes. Then he urged his horse forward. Arrogant. Since you want to die, I'll grant your wish. A sinister look appeared in the eyes of the first prince of Uzan. Without another word, he urged his horse forward, heading to the other side of the practice field. Wang Chong's gaze swept over. Seeing the defeated scion being carried off the practice field, he smiled coldly and urged his horse to the other side. Wang Chong's body didn't emit any aura. This made it impossible for the first prince of Uzan to see through him, and for a moment, he couldn't tell how strong he was. The two of them, one on the east and one on the west, faced each other across the huge practice field. The atmosphere instantly tensed. The eagle, Huang Qianer, the official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, Dusong Mengpoj, and all the scions around the practice field focused their gazes on these two. The sound of falling leaves could be heard. Swoosh! Wang Chong placed his hands in front of him, his woozy steel spear aimed at the distant first prince of Uzan. Humph! Wang Chong sneered, his entire body vibrating with stellar energy, his aura suddenly becoming somber and somber. He had not come to take revenge for what had happened on the road to the west. To provoke him in the capital like this, these Uzan people were far too arrogant. Not even the people of the Chamberlain of Dependencies would be able to protect them. Boom! The earth quaked, and a moment later, the white-hoofed shadow exerted strength on its limbs, bringing Wang Chong with it as it charged toward the first prince of Uzan like a bolt of lightning. Come! The Uzan first prince savagely grinned. At the same time, his highland steed neighed and shot forward with a similarly majestic aura. In a short period of time, the two warhorses had reached their maximum speed. 40 zhang, 30 zhang. Boom! There was a metallic clattering that shook the earth. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong released the halo of Dusk Stallion from his body. A massive halo expanded from Wang Chong's body to the white-hoofed shadow's feet and then began to expand. This massive halo weighed 1,000 jun, causing the earth to slightly sink. Bzzz. After the first halo, there was a flash of light as another halo shot out. Ha ha ha. The sight of the halo beneath Wang Chong's hooves caused a chorus of laughter to erupt from the practice field. Kid, so this is all you've got? And here I was wondering how formidable you were. You're dead for sure. Roar. Amidst the fierce neighing of a horse, there was a flash of light. The space behind the Yusang first prince turned dark, and in this darkness, a massive black yak could be faintly seen. In a flash, it had burrowed into the highland steed beneath the Yusang first prince. The Uzan first prince's speed instantly increased. At the same time, there was a metallic clattering. 1, 2, 3, 5 halos began to expand from beneath the hooves of the Uzan first prince's highland steed. Boom! The air rumbled as the two men and their horses reached their maximum speed. Like two comets streaking across the sky, they charged at each other with indomitable will. They did not hold anything back, nor did they hesitate. Chapter 4:14. Not good. In the crowd, Huang Qianer's expression tightened at this sight, and her heartstrings tightened. Given the Uzan first prince's strength, there was no way Wang Chong would be a match for him. At the same time, a worried look appeared in Old Eagle's eyes. Although he spoke calmly, the anxiety in his heart was no less than Huang Qianer's. The crowd around the practice ground let out cries of alarm. He, this kid is dead for sure. A group of Uzan envoys gathered together and sneered. They looked at Wang Chong as if he were a dead man. No one was optimistic about Wang Chong's chances. Even those who wished for the first prince to be defeated could see this. In his current state, Wang Chong was definitely no match for the Uzun first prince. You brought this upon yourself. You can't blame me for this. On a building at the edge of the practice ground, a figure from the Chamberlain of Dependencies leaned on the railing with both hands and sneered. The Chamberlain of Dependencies could not deal with Wang Chong, but if Wang Chong was courting death, then they could not be blamed. Even if the sage emperor came, he wouldn't be able to blame them. At this time, the only person who still had confidence in Wang Chong was probably himself. 20 zhang. 10 zhang. 8 zhang. Time seemed to slow down countless times. Wang Chong's eyes were clear. Just when he was 6 zhang away from the Uzun first prince, Wang Chong's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then something strange happened. Whoosh! With a shake of Wang Chong's hand, a cold light shot through the air at lightning speed. However, this cold light was not aimed at the Uzun first prince, but at the highland steed beneath the Uzun first prince. Buzz! In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong's Gangqi iron cloak, which was the size of a wicker basket, sank into the highland steed's open mouth and into its stomach. At such a short distance, even the eldest prince of Uzun could not react in time. Chi! Just as the two were about to collide, the white-hoofed shadow, which had reached its peak speed and was almost impossible to change its direction, suddenly swerved, drawing an arc in the air by a hair's breadth and passing by first Prince Uzun several zhang away. This move not only stunned the audience, but even the eldest prince of Uzun was shocked. Therefore, the faster the speed, the harder it was to change direction in a short period of time. Because the huge inertia was not that easy to eliminate. The result of abruptly changing direction would only cause the warhorse to be unable to support its own inertia. In the end, its bones would break, and it would fall. This was not something an ordinary warhorse could do. Rumble. Before there was time to think, the highland steed beneath the Uzun first prince neighed, and then, like a rolling rock, it tumbled away with the Uzun first prince. Whoosh! At almost the same time, after charging 10 some zhang, Wang Chong suddenly made an S-turn and immediately turned back. Not only did he not slow down, he actually increased his speed. Man and spear were one, and the silver tip of the spear was pointed at the distant Uzun first prince, who had just stood up from the corpse of his steed. Not good. Serpentine circle. How could this young man have such a high-level horsemanship? In the distance, the Uzun Great General Dusong Mengpo's pupils constricted when he saw Wang Chong use this move. He instantly recognized this exquisite horsemanship technique that Wang Chong was using, and his entire body paled. Serpentine circle. This was one of the best horsemanship techniques in the world. In a narrow range, these top-class riders could temporarily increase their speed without slowing down or stopping, and at the same time, make a 180-degree turn. On the battlefield, where cavalry reigns supreme, one could easily imagine the usefulness of this horsemanship technique. But whether it was in the Tang dynasty or in the Uzun, this horsemanship technique was not something that an ordinary person could grasp. At the very least, one needed to be at the level of a general to be able to control a warhorse to such an exquisite level. No matter what, this was not something that an ordinary youth of a great clan or a scion of the capital could grasp. Wang Chong was simply too skilled at using this technique. An intense sense of danger welled up in Dusong Mengpo's heart, and he immediately shot out of the crowd. Dusong Mengpo's reaction was very fast, but Wang Chong's was even faster. Rumble. On the massive practice ground, Wang Chong's steed left a trail of dust in his wake, the earth cracking and the heavens collapsing. With the speed of the white-hoofed shadow, the halo of Dusk Stallion, and Wang Chong's own strength, at this moment, Wang Chong had the strength to contend against a true martial Tier 5 expert. Come! Wang Chong fiercely bellowed, the silver spear in his hand exploding with dazzling light. At this moment, Wang Chong exuded an awe-inspiring divine might, a god of war. Meanwhile, on the practice ground, the Uzun first prince, whose warhorse had been killed, gave a cold and sinister laugh as he suddenly did something that no one had expected. In the face of Wang Cheng's full-strength attack, not only did he not retreat, he even unsheathed his saber and slashed at Wang Cheng with all his strength, completely disregarding the openings that had appeared on his body. Bastard! Despicable! Shameless! He's using this move again. The crowd on the practice ground was infuriated by this sight, and they began to curse. They were all too familiar with this sight. The Uzun first prince was clearly playing the same old trick. He wanted to use his body as a shield, using the method he had used against the scions of the great clans to deal with Wang Cheng. Humph. You're courting death. No one can blame you for this. Wang Cheng couldn't help but sneer at this sight, staring at the Uzun first prince like he was a dead man. If the Uzun first prince wanted to use this move against him, he had truly found the wrong person. Others might not dare to kill him for fear of harming him. But he, Wang Cheng, was not one of them. Rumble. With a heaven-shaking boom, Wang Cheng and his horse finally collided in midair with the Uzun first prince. Like two comets colliding in midair, a peerless shockwave swept through the practice ground like a gale sweeping up fallen leaves. Boom! At the moment when the man and the horse collided, Wang Cheng suddenly bounced off the horse's back. Clang! Before the crowd could react, a cold light flashed. Wang Cheng's woozy steel sword pierced the Uzun first prince's 100 acupoints on the top of his head. Time froze. Dark red blood gushed down from the top of the Uzun first prince's head like a fountain, drowning his eyes, brows, nose, and lips. The Uzun first prince's eyes were wide open, and his lips were trembling, but he couldn't say a word. Boom! Boom! His body fell down like a wooden stake. Until the end, the Uzun first prince's eyes were wide open, as if he couldn't believe that Wang Cheng really dared to kill him. The two countries were at odds. In the war between the Uzun Empire and the Tang dynasty, millions of civilians were involved, and countless soldiers died on the battlefield. Wasn't he afraid? Didn't he know the consequences? He actually, really dared to kill him. Boom! After a brief silence, a tsunami of cheers erupted from the practice ground. At this moment, whether they knew Wang Cheng or not, no matter which aristocratic family they belonged to, they couldn't help but raise their arms and cheer excitedly. Wang Cheng did it. Wang Cheng actually killed the arrogant first prince of Uzun. Kacha! A wooden railing fell. An official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies, who was in a nearby building, slammed his palm on the railing. Bastard! The Wang family. Is the Wang family rebelling? The official's face turned purple, and the veins on his palm, which was clenched on the railing, bulged. Due to excessive shock and anger, his body trembled in agitation. First Prince of Uzun. First Prince of Uzun. That bastard of the Wang family had actually killed him. This was a calamity of the heavens. Did he even know what he had done? In that instant, he felt like he couldn't even stand straight, as if the sky was about to change. In the entire building, anyone from the Chamberlain of Dependencies who had even a little understanding of politics had all turned deathly pale. They already had a premonition that a great calamity was about to befall them. The same paleness appeared on the faces of another group of people. First Prince of Uzun, he actually killed him. Huang Qian'er tightly gripped the edges of her sleeves, her face pale. Wang Cheng defeating the stronger should have been something to be happy about, but now, Wang Cheng had no choice but to accept it. But now, Huang Qian'er's heart was filled with anxiety because of another matter. The first Prince of Uzun was dead, and killed by Wang Cheng at that. She could already foresee a violent storm. And the Wang family was at the center of this storm. The Huang family had just submitted to the Wang family. If the Wang family was swept up in it, the Huang family would not be able to escape either. Wang Cheng had been too impulsive. Kid, take your life. All of a sudden, a furious roar cut through the cheers of the crowd. On the enormous practice ground, a surging torrent of golden stellar energy swept toward Wang Chong like an avalanche. Compared to this destructive energy, the battle between Wang Chong and First Prince of Uzun had been like child's play. This attack had been unleashed in anger, and even steel would have been pulverized, much less flesh and blood. Not good. Alarmed, the eagle immediately raised his arm and sent out a signal. Boom! A thick iron arrow shot toward the practice ground with the speed of a thunderbolt, leaving a long trail of white chi behind it. But when the iron arrow shot by the master archer struck the golden torrent of stellar energy, it clattered like it had struck steel and was sent flying, shattering into pieces in midair. No one had expected that Uzun had hidden such an expert in his ranks. Not even the eagle had been able to react. Young master, the eagle's heart sank, and he immediately charged forward. But it was already too late. Just when Wang Chong was about to lose his life to the golden torrent of stellar energy, everyone suddenly heard a soft voice. Dusong Mengpoj. Losing his composure so quickly. Chapter 4:15. On the practice ground, Tensum Zhang away from Wang Chong, Dusong Mengpoj stared in shock at the nearby Tang dynasty youth, his fur coat flapping in the wind. For the first time, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. His trip as a diplomatic envoy had been extremely secretive, and very few people knew of it. Even within the Uzun Empire, not many people knew of it. Dusong Mengpoj had never imagined that the secret he had kept for more than 3 months would be exposed by a youth of the Tang dynasty of unknown origins. At this moment, Dusong Mengpoj's mind was in turmoil. For the first time, he felt like he couldn't see through this youth. But Dusong Mengpoj was far from the only one shocked. Dusong Mengpoj. On a building in the distance, a figure clung tightly to the railing. His eyes were wide open as he looked down at the figure in the square in disbelief. On the battlefield between the Empire and the Uzun, there were very few people who did not know of Dusong Mengpoj. On the Empire's blacklist, this Uzun great general was definitely on it. In the capital of the Empire, there were countless people who wanted his life. Without this person, the Uzun Empire's strength would be greatly weakened. But even though they had heard of Dusong Mengpoj's name, very few people had actually seen him in person. Even if they were in person, not many people would know who he was. The Chamberlain of Dependencies was responsible for receiving the diplomatic missions of the various countries and for dealing with him. The envoy to the Uzun Empire had been arranged by them. But not even they knew that this titan of the Uzun Empire, Dusong Mengpoj, had secretly infiltrated the Tang dynasty. And he had done it right under their noses. "Young man, I don't know what you're talking about," Dusong Mengpoj said, but these words were spoken in the language of the Uzun. His expression was calm, and it took only a few moments for him to return to normal, so fast that one would think that everything that had just happened was an illusion. "Ha ha ha, Dusong Mengpoj, do you really not know what I'm saying?" Dusong Mengpoj spoke to Wang Chong in Uzun, but Wang Chong did not fall for it. In front of countless scions and nobles, he spoke in the language of the Central Plains. If I remember correctly, the legendary Dusong Mengpoj should be able to speak both the Han and Tibetan languages. Moreover, haha, Dusong Mengpoj, if I were you, I would leave the Tang dynasty as quickly as possible, leave this land of trouble. I would not stay a moment longer in the capital of the Tang dynasty. Wang Chong heartily laughed. Not only did he not retreat, he even led his warhorse forward toward the Uzun great general. Wang Chong had only guessed that Uzun first prince would be accompanied by Uzun great general Dusong Mengpoj. After all, legends were often exaggerated and could not be taken seriously. But Dusong Mengpoj's reaction was enough to explain the problem. If Wang Chong had only been guessing at the start, then now, Wang Chong was sure that this Uzun warrior standing in front of him, his aura restrained and his stature not particularly tall, was the Uzun great general Dusong Mengpoj renowned throughout the world. The Uzun did not have many famous generals, but Dusong Mengpoj was definitely one of them. The Uzun army he led was fierce and valiant, and also extremely intelligent. It did not rely purely on brute force. In the war against the Uzun, the Tang dynasty had always held the advantage. But Dusong Mengpo's appearance had filled this gap. Many of the empire's generals, high-ranking officers, and seasoned veterans had died at the hands of his army, and the vast majority of these generals and officers had come from the capital's great clans and clans. It could be said that any clan with a descendant serving in the army in the west would hate Dusong Mengpo to the bone. This person was extremely aggressive and proactive. As long as this person existed, the clans with descendants on the Western Front would continue to suffer massive losses. Wang Chong was sure that there were many scions in the capital, even the emperor himself, who would be more than happy to take Dusong Mengpo's life. A great general was no trifling matter. Wang Chong was well aware that not even all the experts of the Wang clan would be able to do anything to this great general. But just because he couldn't kill him and the Wang clan couldn't kill him didn't mean that there was no other way. There were plenty of people in the empire that could kill him. As long as he exposed his identity, whether or not he was right, someone else would take care of the rest. You asked for it. Wang Chong inwardly sneered. In normal circumstances, it was almost impossible to deal with a foreign great general like Dusong Mengpo outside of the battlefield. But he had been too careless, believing that his tracks were well hidden and that no one would recognize him, so he had sneaked into the capital of the Tang dynasty. Young man, what is your name? Dusong Mengpo spoke in the Uzun language, his eyes glimmering with an inexplicable dangerous light. He already understood the intentions of this youth, and no matter what he said or did, it would be useless. He had already made up his mind to use this method to deal with Wang Chong in front of all these people. At any other time, Dusong Mengpo would have slapped him to death without even glancing at him. But right now, Dusong Mengpo only felt a sharp edge, like he had encountered a hedgehog. Wang Chong. You probably don't understand right now, but in the future, you'll definitely understand. Wang Chong proudly smiled as he sat on his horse. Aren't you afraid that I'll kill you right now? Dusong Mengpo narrowed his eyes, still speaking in the Uzun language. One of them spoke in the Uzun language while the other spoke in the language of the Central Plains. They spoke completely different languages, but they had no problem communicating. Afraid? Of course I'm afraid. Wang Chong smiled. But do you believe that if you don't kill me, you still have a chance to leave the Tang dynasty alive? But if you kill me, you won't even be able to leave this practice ground? Dusong Mengpo narrowed his eyes in silence, his sharp eyes seemingly trying to peer into the depths of Wang Chong's soul. In the 3 months he had spent in the Tang dynasty, this was the first time he had encountered someone he couldn't understand, and it was even a teenager. Killing intent bloomed in his eyes, but Dusong Mengpo still did not move. He had no confidence, nor could he guess at this youth's background. No matter what this youth's background was, he was right about one thing. Starting from now, the capital of the Central Plains was no longer safe for him. The longer he stayed here, the safer he would be. Young man, I won't kill you this time, because you and your clan will soon be in even greater trouble. Dusong Mengpo gave Wang Chong said a profound stare. The first prince isn't someone you can kill just because you want to. Ha ha ha, Wang Chong almost laughed at Dusong Mengpo's words. In the end, he was still a great general of the Uzun Empire, a mighty eagle of the plateau, yet he still dared to use such methods in front of him. If Wang Chong didn't know the ins and outs of the matter, he would never have been able to do anything. Great general speaks well. It just so happens that I also have a few words I wish to say to great general. Under the strange gazes of the crowd, Wang Chong suddenly bent down and whispered into the ear of this renowned great general of the Uzun Empire. These words caused Dusong Mengpo's entire body to tremble, and he raised his head to look at Wang Chong like he had seen a ghost. The indistinct killing intent in his eyes instantly vanished. Ha ha ha, Wang Chong suddenly threw his head back and laughed. Slapping his horse, he galloped toward the Uzun diplomatic mission on the other end of the practice ground. In front of the Tensum Uzun cavalry, Wang Chong stopped, a smirk on his lips. Chihan. Wang Chang's first words in the Uzun language caused the faces of the Uzun cavalry to change. Be careful of your little brother. It's true that the throne is yours, but alas, you might not have the life to sit on it. Ha ha ha. After saying this, Wang Chong roared with laughter. Not lingering any longer, he urged his horse to gallop away. Whether it was the Uzun Great General Dusong Mangpoj or the Uzun cavalry on the practice ground, none of them tried to stop him. They just watched as he arrogantly galloped away. Let's go. Dusong Mangpoj's eyes widened as he said this. Carrying the corpse of the Uzun cavalryman killed by Wang Chong, he broke through the crowd and left. This place was no longer safe, even though nothing had happened in the surroundings. But Dusong Mangpoj could already sense an enormous danger. The mission had been a complete failure, and the capital of the Tang dynasty was now fraught with danger. Dusong Mangpoj didn't even know if he could survive to return to the Uzun plateau. Just as that youth had said, every second he spent here was one more second of danger. Whoosh! The 10-some elite Uzun cavalry followed behind Dusong Mangpoj without a single word. Congratulations to user for changing the practice ground event, Uzun's challenge. You have been rewarded with 10 points of destiny energy. Congratulations to user for changing the Uzun royal family war. You have been rewarded with 5 points of destiny energy. Two voices rang out in Wang Chang's mind like heavenly music. Almost at the same time, the originally quiet training field once again exploded into a wave of cheers that soared into the sky. Wang Chong! Wang Chong! Wang Chong! Wave after wave of cheers crashed down like tsunamis. Not many people knew what Wang Chong had just done, but everyone knew that the insufferably arrogant Uzun diplomatic mission had been forced to flee in dejection. And all of this had been accomplished by Duke Zhou's grandson, that Wang Chong of the Wang clan. This is really both fame and fortune. As Wang Chong listened to the cheers of the practice ground, his lips slowly curled into a smile. His trip down the Spirit Vein Mountain was not in vain with the gains he got from the training field. Defeating the Yusang First Prince had been rewarded with 10 points of destiny energy, and speaking those words had been worth 5 points. He had easily earned 15 points of destiny energy from this trip. This was almost as much as the Goguryeo assassin's encirclement. Wang Chong was beginning to realize that as long as he could successfully change the course of events that would have a major impact on the empire, the rewards would be far greater than if he worked alone. Adding on the 79 points of destiny energy from before, I now have 94 points of destiny energy. It's just a pity that Uzun is too far away, the heavens high and the emperor far away. I could only say those words. Otherwise, if I tried to sow discord, I would have gained far more than just 5 points of destiny energy. Wang Chong said to himself, feeling rather regretful. Chapter 4:16. As Wang Chong walked into the crowd, he was greeted by cheers. No matter what, after so many days, someone had finally done something gratifying. Young master. Amidst the crowd, the eagle's face lit up with joy as he led a group of people to welcome Wang Chong. Only Huang Qianer stood to the side, a look of worry in her eyes. Wang Chong. Just when the crowd was at its most lively and jubilant, a cold voice, like autumn frost, suddenly came from the crowd. Amidst the crowd, protected by the Imperial Guard, was an ashen official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. His face was filled with rage as he walked over aggressively, as if he was going to denounce Wang Chong. This time, Wang Chong had barged in uninvited. The people of the Chamberlain of Dependencies had long since tolerated him. It was already quite impressive that they had been able to endure until now. Wang Chong, you sure have guts. Do you know that you've already committed a calamity? Your Wang clan has committed a calamity, and yet you can still laugh here. The cold voice was like a gust of cold wind that swept through the crowd. The area within 10 zhang immediately fell silent. All eyes turned to the ill-intentioned official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies and Wang Chong. A look of fear appeared in many people's eyes. In the capital, the Chamberlain of Dependencies was a special existence. They did not have any real authority, but they wielded more authority than any other organization. This was because the Chamberlain of Dependencies could bypass the imperial court and directly reach the heavens. Moreover, as long as the Chamberlain of Dependencies needed it, they could act first and report later. This was a privilege that had been bestowed upon the Chamberlain of Dependencies when it was first established. They had enormous authority to complete matters of utmost importance to the imperial family, such as the Mount Tai pilgrimage, the annual temple sacrifices, god sacrifices, and the imperial ancestral temple ceremonies. Every one of these matters was of great significance to the imperial family, so they also bestowed upon the Chamberlain of Dependencies a transcendent power and authority. Although the nobles, scions, and aristocrats were high and mighty in the eyes of the commoners, they were insignificant ants before the Chamberlain of Dependencies. He, my lord, Wang Chang's actions have not been out of line. I wonder where the Chamberlain of Dependencies' so-called calamity came from. Wang Chong grinned. He saw that the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies did not retreat, but rather, with a flick of his sleeve, he walked towards the official who seemed to have an extraordinary status. Don't you know what you're saying? The official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies glared at him. If looks could kill, Wang Chong would have died 1,000 times over. Don't you know what kind of person Prince Uzun is? This was the heir to the Uzun Empire, the true crown prince. Our Chamberlain of Dependencies did everything we could to protect him, but he was actually killed by you. Do you know how big of a disaster this is? The decades of peace between the Empire and Uzun will be destroyed by you. Your Wang clan should go apologize to the Holy Emperor. Guards! Take this kid down for me. As the official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies spoke, he suddenly pointed his finger at Wang Chong. Who dares? The eagle roared and stomped down, standing in front of Wang Chong. His arms were wide open, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he firmly shielded Wang Chong behind him. The authority granted by His Majesty, the decree of Emperor Gaozu and Emperor Taizong, allows the Chamberlain of Dependencies to act as it pleases. You didn't think you could just walk away after causing such a disaster, did you? The official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies waved his hand. Whoosh! 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 Countless imperial army soldiers and experts of the Chamberlain of Dependencies immediately swarmed in, surrounding Wang Chong and Old Eagle. The Yusang First Prince followed protocol and joined the diplomatic mission, handing over his credentials. Everything had been done in an orderly fashion. Everything had been done in accordance with the rules, but he had died in a small practice field not far from the imperial city, right before the eyes of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. This was no small crime. Not even the Chamberlain of Dependencies could bear such a crime. And compared to the destruction that the death of the first Prince of Uzun would cause in the future, this matter paled in comparison. If the Chamberlain of Dependencies wanted to smoothly escape responsibility, they could not allow the main culprit, Wang Chong, to escape. If anyone dares to act against young master, don't blame me, the eagle, for being impolite. The eagle's arms were wide open, and his eyes were red with anxiety. The surrounding guards from the Wang clan and the Zhang clan also drew their swords. Forget it, this is all I can do. Huang Qianer sighed. Her right hand gripped the silver sword on her back and she stood in front of Wang Chong, but she did not draw her sword. This battle was unavoidable. The death of the first Prince of Uzun would cause the entire capital to be in turmoil. It was certain to cause an earth-shattering uproar, and all the great clans, including the Huang clan, would be drawn into it. No matter what would happen in the future, at the very least, she had done her part by protecting him today. Bastards! Do you want to rebel? Men, take him down for me today no matter what. The official from the Chamberlain of Dependencies suddenly pointed at Wang Chong, also enraged. Clang clang clang. In an instant, swords and sabers were unsheathed, gleaming with cold light. The two sides faced each other, and the atmosphere was tense. Ha! Sheath your weapons. Just when the atmosphere was at its most tense, Wang Chong suddenly sneered and pushed aside the eagle's hands. "Young master." The eagle turned his head anxiously. The Chamberlain of Dependencies was no laughing matter. If he was taken away by them, even if he didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Not to mention, the Chamberlain of Dependencies was clearly trying to push Wang Chong to his death, using him as a scapegoat. "Don't worry, the eagle, things haven't reached that point yet." Wang Chong grinned and waved his hand, placating the eagle, his expression relaxed. Under the astonished gazes of the two sides, Wang Chong suddenly walked out of the encirclement and stood in front of the official and the experts of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. "What is your name?" Wang Chong walked over and asked. "Zheng Qinzhou, how is it?" Zheng Qinzhou coldly said, thinking that Wang Chong wanted to remember his name so that he could take revenge in the future. But how could the Chamberlain of Dependencies be afraid of the Wang clan's threat? "Ha!" Wang Chong suddenly laughed. Under the dazed gazes of the experts of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, he suddenly stretched out a palm and lightly patted Zheng Qinzhou's face. "The Chamberlain of Dependencies is just this group of experts. No wonder you were blinded by a single leaf and rode all over your neck." "What do you mean?" Zheng Qinzhou fiercely dodged Wang Chong's palm and raised his head, glaring fiercely at him. "Ha! The Chamberlain of Dependencies is in charge of receiving all foreign nations, but you can't even tell the real and fake princes apart?" Rumble. When Wang Chong said these words, let alone the people of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, even the eagle and Huang Qian'er were stunned. "What do you mean? After receiving a fake prince for more than 3 months, you still can't tell? Fools! Do you think that if that really was the Uzun first prince, those Uzun cavalry would leave so easily? Didn't any of you notice that their reaction was too calm after the death of the first prince? You've received them for more than 3 months in vain, yet you can't even recognize a fake prince. And you even let them kill so many people on the practice field." Buzz! A single stone raised 1,000 ripples. Before Huang Qian'er and Zheng Qinzhou could say anything, the surrounding people were thrown into an uproar by Wang Chong's words. "Fake prince? How is that possible? Does this mean that we've all been deceived by the Chamberlain of Dependencies? A fake prince actually killed so many of our people? Damn it, it can't be, right? Why can't it be? If it wasn't fake, how could young Master Wang have dared to kill the first prince so decisively? So you're saying that we've all been deceived? Bastard! This is infuriating." At this moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone's eyes were filled with rage and irritation. The first prince on the practice field was actually not very strong. But because of his identity as the Uzun first prince, and because he always used his body as a shield to block swords, everyone was afraid to take action, and he had used tricks to kill so many people. If they had known his true identity, they would have long since cut him into pieces. In an instant, everyone was filled with rage at being deceived. The eagle and Huang Qian'er looked at each other. Hiss! Zheng Qinzhou took in a deep breath and stared in a daze at Wang Chong, suddenly speechless. He had originally intended to capture Wang Chong so that he could explain himself to his superiors. But now, capturing him was no longer important. If what Wang Chong said was true, then the Chamberlain of Dependencies had truly failed in its duty. "How did you know?" Zheng Qinzhou sternly said. Although he did not nod, even he believed it. Killing the first prince of the Uzun first prince was no trifling matter that involved 2 countries. Wang Chong's actions had been far too straightforward, so straightforward that he had not hesitated in the slightest. If he had known about the background of the Uzun first prince, if he had known that the one on the practice field was a fake, then his actions could be completely explained. Moreover, with the death of the first prince, Dusong Mengpoj, and the others had left too quickly. Although there was nothing wrong with wanting to protect oneself, one had to consider the situation. If the Tang dynasty had encountered such a problem, it would have never so easily left. Not even the main culprit, Wang Chong, had been eliminated. This has never been a very difficult matter. It's just that all of you have underestimated the Uzun. How could the mighty first prince of the Uzun first prince, the future successor, so easily put himself in danger and even use his body to block a sword? Even if he agreed, would great General Dusong Mengpoj allow it if he was there? None of you suspected anything about such an obvious matter. A simple game of leopard and crown prince left all of you running in circles. If I hadn't appeared, how many more people were you prepared to let him kill? Truly foolish beyond belief. Could the lives of the Uzun be more precious than those of the Tang dynasty? There's no need for all of you to worry about the matter of first prince of the Uzun first prince. Our Wang clan will take responsibility for this matter. If you have the time, you should think about how to explain to His Majesty those 30-some scions and young elites who died in vain. With these words, Wang Chong pushed Zheng Qinzhou aside and began to leave. Zheng Qinzhou stood there in a daze, not even trying to stop him. Wang Chong's words had completely surpassed his imagination. Zheng Qinzhou's mind was blank. He could not accept that he had been abandoned by a group of Uzun people. How could this be? Chapter 4:17. As Wang Chong was leaving the practice ground, deep within the palace, 5th Prince Li Heng was pacing back and forth with his head lowered, his heart brimming with apprehension. In front of him was a threshold not even a foot high. But this threshold was like an invisible wall, firm and boundless, exuding a suffocating pressure as it stood in front of Li Heng. All was quiet, but Li Heng's forehead was covered in cold sweat and his heart was filled with indescribable anxiety. More than 2 hours had passed since the audience, but even now, Li Heng still had not received the summons. Li Heng was well aware that his fate would be decided by this tiny threshold. Buzz! Suddenly, the gate opened and a sharp voice came from deep within the hall. Summon 5th Prince Li Heng for an audience. Buzz! It was like a heavy hammer had struck his heart, causing Li Heng's entire body to tremble as he came to his senses. The summons he had waited so long for had finally arrived. Li Heng took in a deep breath, calmed himself, and tidied up his clothes. Only then did he raise his foot and nervously step over the threshold. Thump! The sound of his foot landing on the ground made Li Heng feel like he was stepping on a mountain. The hall was deep and serene, seemingly without end. Beneath his foot was a cold and icy sensation. Other than the solemn and cold guards of imperial insignia, each 50 zhang tall, there was no one else in the passage. The passage was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After what seemed like only a moment, but also like countless eons, when Li Heng felt like he would never reach the end, his vision suddenly opened up and a bright light came from up ahead. At the same time, a boundless, noble, divine, and immeasurably vast qi emerged. In front of this qi, the pressure on Li Heng's body suddenly became thousands of times heavier. Your son pays respects to Imperial Father. Li Heng stepped over the threshold, not daring to raise his head as he respectfully and fearfully kneeled on the ground. Even though he was already 20, Li Heng still felt the same reverence for that godlike figure in the hall, even more so than when he was a child. Huo Guang shook his head. The figure above the hall remained motionless. Below that figure, Li Heng sensed many weak but equally powerful auras. They were the princes in the depths of the palace. It was obvious that he was not the only one who appeared here today. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Cold and callous gazes came from all around, landing on the kneeling Li Heng near the gate. There was no kinship in the royal family. It didn't matter if it was a wise ruler or an incompetent ruler. Dynasty after dynasty, generation after generation, this was an iron law that no one could change. In the palace, Li Heng felt no warmth, only a deep chill. Get up! After an unknown period of time, a dignified and vast voice finally resounded from above the hall. Li Heng trembled in fear as he stood up, but he still did not dare to raise his head. Following his usual custom, he lowered his head and walked to the very end of the hall. Although he was the esteemed 5th prince, Li Heng had the least background and was the weakest of the princes. Thus, in terms of seniority, he would always stand at the very end. The princes had never cared about his status as the fifth prince, and the Holy Emperor had never cared about such things. Contrary to what Li Heng had imagined, the Holy Emperor did not immediately question him after he entered the ranks, as if he had forgotten about him. The other princes also retracted their gazes. The air seemed to have suddenly returned to normal, and everything returned to normal. Li Heng was like a ball of air, standing at the very end of the line, no one paying any attention to him. An enormous chi, as heavy as a mountain, towered closest to his father. Although it was as bright as the sun, it was inconceivably powerful to the other princes. Li Heng knew that this was the first prince's chi. In terms of seniority, no matter which method was used, the first prince, as the future heir apparent, would always stand at his father's feet, the person closest to him. This was a fact that no one could change. Every time he was summoned, his father would ask him about the politics of the court, the maintenance of armaments, the cultivation of martial arts, the livelihood of the common people, and so on. Every time they met, it was a test. It was not just him. The other princes were the same. While each of them was being tested by their father, they were also displaying their talents. The imperial household lacked the warmth of ordinary fathers and sons. This was also why Li Heng had avoided the imperial palace. The politics of the court, foreign affairs, irrigation works. Li Heng did not understand any of the things the princes discussed. It was not that he was too shallow, but that he had never had these resources, not even a teacher to teach him these things. Li Heng did not dare to hate, nor did he dare to complain. Just like before, he stood there with his head lowered, trembling in fear and motionless. The first prince, the second prince, the third prince, the fourth prince, and then the sixth prince, the seventh prince, and all the princes stepped forward to accept the Holy Emperor's test. When it was finally his turn, okay, let's end it here for today. The dignified and majestic figure at the top of the hall suddenly waved his hand. Li Heng had been mercilessly skipped. A hint of disappointment flitted through Li Heng's eyes. He was a little disappointed and a little glad, but he quickly regained his composure. He had experienced this sort of thing many times in the court. Today, we father and son have gathered together, so let's not talk too much about politics. Come, bring on the music. Feast. This order was like a sluice gate had been opened. Countless maids and eunuchs immediately rushed in through the door of the side hall, carrying plates of fruit, tables, chairs, wine pots, and incense burners with smiles on their faces. In just a few moments, the princes were surrounded by tables and chairs brimming with an ancient charm, laden with fruits, pastries, wine, and dishes. Once the princes were seated. Clang! The chimes of the bells and the sounds of musical instruments could be heard. Several beautiful maids dressed in white dresses with fair skin and white bones walked in like fairies. Imperial Father. Just when the maids were preparing to enter the center of the hall and perform a palace dance, a voice interrupted the music. Imperial Father, this sort of soft palace music is a bit lacking in the iron-blooded style of our Tang dynasty. Your son has heard that fifth brother has prepared a sword dance for Imperial Father to entertain his brothers, and it was with Imperial Father's permission. Fifth brother, don't you think so? The third prince suddenly stood up from his seat and spoke to the ceiling of the hall. He then turned his head to look at Li Heng at the very back of the line, his cold eyes shining with a domineering light. Buzz! For a moment, time seemed to freeze. All the music, dancing, talking, breathing, chewing, everything vanished. The relaxed atmosphere suddenly became tense, brimming with the silent glint of swords. All the maids and eunuchs in the palace lowered their heads at the same time, apprehension in their eyes. The other princes sneered and turned to look at Li Heng at the very back. Even the first prince, who was seated at the top of the banquet table, put down his chopsticks and turned his head to look over, even though he did not have the same sarcasm as the other princes. The entire hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. It's here. Li Heng sensed the suffocating pressure that followed him like a shadow, and his entire body paled. He had originally believed that he could escape this calamity. He hadn't expected his third imperial brother to still let him go. The fact that he hadn't made trouble at the start wasn't because he hadn't noticed Li Heng, but because he had left this opportunity for now. As he sensed those gazes of ridicule, sneer, malice, or hostility, Li Heng's forehead suddenly became covered in cold sweat. He had never experienced this sort of feeling before. For the first time, he was the center of attention, but it was not what he wanted. Third brother really isn't willing to let me go, Li Heng quietly said to himself. He had never learned a sword dance, nor did he know how to do it. None of the princes had ever performed a sword dance. Li Heng knew that the third prince was doing this on purpose. Your Highness, you must remember that in the palace, the more you speak, the more mistakes you make. The less you speak, the less mistakes you make. This is the result of this old servant's decades of experience. Your Highness, you must remember this. Li Jingzhong's words before entering the palace once more rang out in his ears. No one could predict what would happen after entering the palace, and Li Jingzhong would not be able to enter. These were his final words before Li Heng entered the palace. Imperial father, Li Heng was just about to refuse when he heard the fifth prince's voice. Fifth brother, what's wrong? Why are you so hesitant in front of Imperial father? Do you want to go back on your word and suddenly become unwilling? His voice was cold and tinged with a sneer, as if he had long ago seen through Li Heng's thoughts. Third brother, you, Li Heng straightened his body, but just when he was about to speak, bzzz. It was like an ancient mountain was pressing down on him. Li Heng suddenly felt a majestic and awe-inspiring gaze fall upon him. Imperial father. Li Heng's heart trembled, and he immediately swallowed the words he had been about to spit out. But before he could speak again, he heard the Holy Emperor wave his hand and speak in an indifferent and calm voice. Enough, Bao, don't make things difficult for your fifth brother. Buzz. A bloody aura suddenly rushed to his head. This was not the first time Li Heng had been ignored, but this time, Li Heng found it extremely difficult to endure. The words Wang Chong had said outside the Kunwu training camp suddenly appeared in his mind. Your Highness, how can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? You have no path of retreat. If you want to change your situation, change His Majesty's view of you. You can only take the initiative and dare to fight for it. After entering the palace, the third prince and the others will definitely do everything they can to make things difficult for you. In normal circumstances, you will definitely shrink back. So, no matter what, you must do the exact opposite. You must take the initiative to display yourself in front of His Majesty. This audience is your best chance. No matter what, you must grasp it well. Only by putting yourself on the line can you be reborn. If you want to obtain His Majesty's favor and attention, this might be your last chance. Blood continued to gush to the top of his head. Li Heng could endure the ridicule, cruelty, apathy, attacks, and assassinations of the princes, but the one thing he could not endure was the disregard of his most respected and beloved father. Imperial father, I'm ready. Your son truly has prepared a sword dance that he wishes to offer to Imperial father. This sentence was loud and clear, and the rumbling sound reverberated throughout the entire hall. Li Heng kneeled on the ground, his body trembling, but his voice was firm. For a moment, the hall was silent. All the princes were dumbfounded. Even the Holy Emperor's gaze froze for a moment. He turned his head, his gaze once more falling on Li Heng. Permitted. Chapter 418. Boom. The gate opened and a rider galloped in. Outside the palace gate, Li Jingzhong's heart tightened when he saw the fifth prince ride out. Tugging on the corner of his robe, he strode forward and took the reins of the fifth prince's horse. Your Highness, how was it? Your Highness, how was it, how was it? Li Jingzhong raised his head, his body fiercely trembling from nervousness and excitement. This matter was no small matter. One could say that the fifth prince's life depended on it. Similarly, Li Jingzhong's life depended on it as well. In the palace, it was common for a subject to die when the master was humiliated. Thus, one could easily imagine how uneasy Li Jingzhong had been in the last few hours. "Uncle Jing, don't be nervous. It's fine, it's fine." Li Heng sat on his horse, his face red with excitement, his neck red. He seemed even more excited than Li Jingzhong. Li Heng still couldn't restrain his excitement when he thought about what had just happened in the palace. His entire life of being low-key, cowering, tolerating, and cowardly had all vanished into thin air in that moment in the palace. Li Heng knew that the third prince was trying to harm him, and he also knew that if he revealed the truth that he knew martial arts, he would likely infuriate the Holy Emperor and be attacked by his imperial brothers. He would then be accused of deceiving the sovereign. But Li Heng couldn't worry about such things. After being bullied, plotted against, ignored, and ridiculed in the palace for 20 years, Li Heng's most intense desire suddenly exploded. Even if he was to be executed tomorrow, he still wanted his father to look at him in the eye with dignity. Li Heng didn't know how to perform a sword dance, but he did. There was no technique, and it was different from any other sword dance in the world. Li Heng's sword dance came from his heart, a bold and unrestrained dance of decades of venting his emotions. When the sword dance ended, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Li Heng was prepared to await the worst judgment, but then he heard the world's most beautiful voice. After 10-some years, he finally heard the voice of his father from his childhood, a voice filled with affirmation. Li Heng could still remember the surprised and marvelous expressions on the faces of his imperial brothers when they heard those words. "Uncle Jing, Wang Chong was right. He was right. Let's go and find Wang Chong." Li Heng was extremely excited. If it wasn't for Wang Chong's encouragement and his analysis, even if he wanted to perform at that time, he wouldn't have had the courage to do so. As it turned out, everything was as Wang Chong had predicted. If he showed even the slightest bit of hesitation or denial during today's audience, then he would really be unable to escape today's calamity. Wang Chong was right. Only by taking the initiative and fighting for it with all their might would they have any hope of survival. Just as Wang Chong had analyzed, His Majesty was an aggressive army. His life had been forged through all kinds of adversities. As long as she took the initiative and performed well, she would be able to gain her father's favor. The moment his imperial father spoke, Li Heng raised his head. His eyes could clearly see the look in Li Heng's eyes. He had never felt his father's feelings as he did now. Like a bird in a cage, the moment his sword began to dance, Li Heng had broken the shackles in his heart, broken all the apprehensions in his body and heart. Li Jingzhong did not say anything. He stared blankly at the excited fifth prince, who was waving his hands and feet in joy. He was completely stunned. He had never seen Li Heng like this before. He was dancing around, confident, passionate, and brimming with initiative and enthusiasm. In all his years of serving Li Heng, Li Jingzhong had never seen him like this. Li Jingzhong had a faint feeling that the fifth prince standing before him seemed to be a little different from the fifth prince he had remembered in the past. But not even he could tell what was different. "Let's go." Li Jingzhong came back to his senses and led Li Heng's horse out. "Humph. Bastard." Upon returning to the palace, the third prince furiously slammed his palm down, crushing the 3-inch thick table of black gold into a ball of paper. When he thought about what had happened in the palace, the third prince's face turned ashen and nasty. He had put in a lot of effort and had calculated everything. The only thing he hadn't expected was for the fifth prince to change from his usual routine and offer a dance. And even more surprising was that not only had his father not punished him for such a major matter, he had even bestowed upon him a special robe of the imperial clan. A robe bestowed by the emperor was no trifling matter. Even the slowest person would understand what his father meant. Starting from now, no one was allowed to do anything to Li Heng. The robe bestowed by the emperor was a protective talisman. Anyone who dared to do anything to Li Heng would be seeking their own death. Because doing so was tantamount to challenging the Holy Emperor. Investigate for me just what's going on with fifth brother. Not even Imperial Father can cure his illness. How in the world did he manage to cultivate all of a sudden? Furthermore, he has already reached Origin Energy Tier 9. The third prince turned his head, his heart seething with rage. Your Highness, it's useless. In the hall, the black-robed elder with triangular eyes, ghost hands, who had once appeared near the Spirit Vein Mountain, sternly said. The first prince has already investigated, but he didn't find any clues at all. The fifth prince has been very low-key in the training camp. Moreover, the fifth prince's illness, not even His Majesty can do anything about it. This isn't something a normal person can do. There's definitely something we don't know about. The third prince said nothing, a hint of apprehension in his eyes. This was one of the reasons he hadn't sent anyone to assassinate Li Heng. If Li Heng really did have some formidable expert protecting him, someone who could change Li Heng's fate and completely alter his constitution, then this was not someone the third prince could deal with. If things went wrong, this person might even leave behind some clues that would be disadvantageous to him. He had taken such a big detour to plot against Li Heng in front of his imperial father precisely because of this apprehension. Even though he had still failed in the end. Damn it! The third prince clenched his teeth and clenched his fists. No matter who he is, I have to find him. I'd like to see just who is helping him. Ghost hands, take your men and leave. Old Fifth has just been rewarded by Imperial Father and is at the height of his success. Once he leaves the Imperial Palace, he will definitely go find that person. Take your men and carefully reward them. Bastard thing. Even if he's an immortal from the heavens, if he dares to interfere in the struggle for Crown Prince, I will have him fall to the ground. Yes, your subordinate will immediately take his men. Ghost Hands lowered his head, gathered his men, and left with them. Meanwhile, in the palaces of the other princes, the second prince, the fourth prince, the sixth prince, the seventh prince, all the princes were also paying attention to this matter. Old Wu, who had always been a coward and appeared to be a coward, suddenly became so proactive and showed off his abilities, which surprised everyone. Even more shocking was the Holy Emperor's attitude. The matter of Old Fifth had actually been so lightly brushed aside. Not only had the Holy Emperor not rebuked him, he had even gifted him a robe. He hadn't even asked about the cause of the matter. This Old Fifth, I truly underestimated him. I didn't think that he would hide himself so deeply. If he had been obedient and didn't have any improper thoughts, it wouldn't have mattered. But since he has such ambitions, he can't be tolerated. There's only one imperial throne. Since he wants to sit on it, there's no need to talk about brotherly affection. While he's still weak, we have to find a way to get rid of him no matter what. Otherwise, if he's allowed to sit on the throne, what will happen? There are already enough brothers in the palace fighting over the throne. There can't be any more. Not even Li Heng could have imagined that his sword dance had simultaneously aroused the hostility and killing intent of the other princes. If their hostility toward Li Heng had been limited to thoughts before, now, after this banquet, these thoughts could be transformed into action. There was no familial affection in the imperial household. If this was the case between father and son, then what about brothers? Not even a saint could resolve a problem, so how could a robe solve it? It was just that everything had to be done in even greater secrecy. Flap flap. As the darkness deepened, a black crow flapped its wings and flew through the sky, ultimately landing in a corner in the northwest corner. It's here. The eagle raised a hand and caught the crow. It seems that the fifth prince's side is safe. Wang Chong held his hands behind him as he gazed at the crow in the eagle's hand and breathed a sigh of relief. Right now, he was most worried about the fifth prince. He had been waiting here this entire time for news of the fifth prince. Young master is correct. Li Jingzhong's message says that the fifth prince has managed to escape unscathed, and he even obtained an official robe bestowed upon him by the Holy Emperor. The fifth prince says that he wishes to see you, but Li Jingzhong says that he has already stopped you from seeing him. The eagle finished reading the letter on the crow's leg and nodded. This fellow is rather useful. Wang Chong nodded. As he listened to the eagle read the contents of the letter, a strange look flashed across his eyes. Li Jingzhong, the future treacherous official, reacted quickly in this aspect. He knew that this was not the time for them to meet, so he had taken the initiative to stop the fifth prince. It was worth sparing his life back then. I hope that he can continue to be like this. Wang Chong thought to himself. Li Jingzhong was gradually displaying his true potential. As the future treacherous official, he had almost complete control over the entire imperial court. Li Jingzhong's perception of politics and his ability to sense danger were unquestionable. With him by the fifth prince's side, the fifth prince would be much safer, and he would also be a great help. At least, that was the case for now. Let's go, we should set off. We still have a very important mission ahead of us. This is just the beginning. Wang Chong raised his head, his gaze piercing through the buildings toward the imperial palace. Only he understood that although Li Heng had successfully escaped this calamity, it was not the end. It was merely the beginning of an even more magnificent and dangerous chess game. Once one entered this chess game, one could not withdraw. Until the very end, it could not be considered resolved. Big Uncle, himself, the entire Wang clan, the King of Song, King Qi, the first prince, the second prince, all the princes and princesses, no matter who they were, could not withdraw until the very end. Chapter 419. In the depths of the imperial palace, Wang Chong finally saw the first beauty of the Tang dynasty for the first time. But as soon as he saw consort Tai Zhen, Wang Chong's heart sank. He suddenly knew that no matter what plan he had before, he had to reconsider it from this moment on. Because the first beauty of the Tang dynasty was completely different from what he had known before. The dark-colored palace curtains swayed, and a jade-like foot with smooth skin and jade-like bones stretched out from behind the curtains, lightly landing on the white jade steps. That delicate jade-like toe was even more sparkling and translucent than the white jade beneath it. As the slender foot stretched out, a peerless beauty with smooth skin and fair bones slowly walked out from the inside with her head held high. Wang Chong, you're finally willing to see me. A voice echoed in the palace, accompanied by a pair of sharp eyes with a faint smile, looking down at Wang Chong. With this gaze, Wang Chong immediately felt an invisible pressure on his shoulders. Wang Chong had never seen consort Tai Zhen before, but no matter how ignorant he was, Wang Chong knew that although consort Tai Zhen had stirred up violent waves in the imperial court, she herself was just an ordinary woman. Although the Yang family was also a local high-ranking official, they were far inferior to the Wang family, a family of generals and ministers. As for consort Tai Zhen, she was just an ordinary person who didn't know any martial arts. But now, consort Tai Zhen not only revealed a sharp and superior aura that only the concubines and concubines in the imperial palace could have, but also a strong and powerful aura that far surpassed his own. The 9th level of the martial realm. No, she has definitely reached the 1st or 2nd level of the profound martial realm. Her strength has improved so much in just a few months. Wang Chong felt a chill in his heart. Consort Tai Zhen incident. Wang Chong had learned a lot about consort Tai Zhen from the King of Song. Consort Tai Zhen doesn't know martial arts. Wang Chong was certain of this. However, in just over half a year, not only had consort Tai Zhen changed, but even Yang Zhao had changed. However, consort Tai Zhen's changes were much greater than Yang Zhao's. Ha ha ha, little sister, this is my good brother, and also your good brother. Don't make things difficult for him. A hearty voice came from the side. There were no outsiders here. Yang Zhao hurriedly stood up and spoke up for his sworn brother. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. The current Yang Zhao was completely different from when Wang Chong had first met him. He wore a white robe and a black silk hat, and his right hand was stroking his beard. His entire body naturally exuded the aura of a scholarly official that would win the admiration of others. Stellar energy rumbled through his body, and he exuded the enormous aura of a true martial tier 5 or 6. This ruffian who had once wandered the streets of the capital without the strength to truss a chicken had undergone such an astonishing transformation after entering the palace and officialdom. It was as if he had been reborn. Wang Chong had diligently practiced for almost a year, but compared to the transformations that Yang Zhao and consort Taijin had undergone in the last few months, he truly couldn't keep up. Forbidden bestowment art. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind as he subconsciously thought of this forbidden art. Wang Chong was no stranger to this forbidden art. Back then, his master, the evil emperor, had intended to use this method to transfer all of his energy to Wang Chong. This method could make one an expert in a short period of time, but his master, the evil emperor, would also be doomed. This was a huge price, so Wang Chong had refused on the spot. No matter what kind of bestowment art it was, the price to make one an expert in a short period of time was not small. Thus, this method had never been widely used. But the imperial household was clearly different. I heard back then that there was a group of secret guardians in the palace. These people began cultivating from a young age, and the meaning of their existence was to accumulate energy so that they could use the bestowment art on the princes and princesses. I didn't pay much attention back then, but it seems that the rumors were true. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil, but he quickly regained his composure. Your Highness, you're right. Wang Chong should have come long ago. It's just that I've just joined the Kunwu training camp and couldn't leave. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Wang Chong immediately lowered his head and said respectfully. You sure are honest. Consort Taijin sneered coldly, but her expression eventually eased up. Even though she was a little angry at this lad for rejecting her time and time again, she couldn't stand in the way of her cousin. Moreover, it was true that Wang Chong had joined the Kunwu training camp. However, it was impossible for her to let go of the matter so easily. Speak, what is it? The mobilization of the Ministry of War has just passed, so you wouldn't have come here if there wasn't anything special. Speak, what is it? As he spoke, he spread open his hands, and two mysterious white-clothed beauties with powerful auras, even stronger than the old nanny at Princess Ni Huang's side, walked out barefooted from within the curtain. These two middle-aged beauties had hairpins in their hair, and they had cold expressions on their faces. They each held consort Taijin's hands and supported her to sit on the throne in Yuzhen Palace. On their foreheads was a tear-shaped flame totem, and it was extremely eye-catching. A hint of astonishment flashed across Wang Chong's eyes, but he didn't say anything. It's about the fifth prince, Wang Chong said. But as soon as he said those words, the atmosphere in Yuzhen Palace suddenly changed. Consort Taijin's face darkened, and even Yang Zhao's expression darkened. Even though he was the one who had recommended Wang Chong, he hadn't known what Wang Chong was going to say. Wang Chong, do you know what you're saying? You're crazy. Men, send the guest out. Consort Taijin's face was as cold as ice. She shot a glance at Yang Zhao, stood up, and immediately ordered the guest out. Even though she hadn't been in the palace for long, she wasn't blind. The matter regarding the fifth prince had only happened in the afternoon, but there was no one in the palace who didn't know about it. She was favored in the palace, and with the favor of the Holy Emperor and her concubine status, no one in the palace dared to provoke her. But Consort Taijin also knew that there were some things that she couldn't afford to provoke in a place like this. The War of the Princes just so happened to be one of those taboos. Wang Chong, you've really gone too far this time. The War of the Princes isn't something we can interfere with. Do you know what you're asking of her ladyship? The fifth prince is now the enemy of everyone. Who knows how many people want to kill him? Whoever dares to help him will become the enemy of all the princes and princesses in the palace, as well as all the concubines in the palace. Damn it, if I knew you were here for this kind of thing, I definitely wouldn't have brought you here. Yang Zhao's expression was very unsightly. There was no need for Consort Tai Zhen to give him that attitude. If he had known this, he would have stopped Wang Chong first. Don't easily get involved in the disputes between the princes. This was common sense. Even if one didn't have the accumulation of great clans, without the experience and lessons of the clan, this was a principle that even an ordinary person understood. The danger of the war of the princes was too great. They still didn't have a stable footing in the palace. Even if they were favored, this was still a taboo that couldn't be lightly touched. They couldn't agree to Wang Chong's request. This had already exceeded the scope of an ordinary request. Her ladyship. Although the temperature in the room plummeted and the atmosphere was no longer suitable for further discussion, Wang Chong didn't leave. He knew that this matter wouldn't be easy, but no matter what, Wang Chong had to try. Her ladyship, if an elephant entered the forest, what would happen? What do you mean? Consort Tai Zhen sneered. Had Wang Chong gone crazy? What forest? What elephant? She didn't think that these words meant anything. No matter what, she would never easily help the fifth prince and put herself in danger. However, Wang Chong was as calm as ever. There was no change in his expression. But, if the forest turns into a room like this, but the animals in the forest don't change. If the elephant doesn't change, what will happen to your ladyship in the future? Wang Chong continued. Wang Chong, what are you trying to say? This time, Consort Tai Zhen's eyelids finally twitched. She stared at Wang Chong, vaguely sensing something. Your ladyship, the forest has turned into a room, but the animals haven't changed. The elephant hasn't changed. Does your ladyship think that the animals huddled together will wait to be trampled to death by the elephant, or will they attack as a group? Impudent. Are you trying to say that I'm an elephant? This time, before Wang Chong could finish speaking, Consort Tai Zhen interrupted him. This comparison was too rude. Your ladyship, please forgive me. Wang Chong didn't have that intention. But doesn't your ladyship feel that your situation is very similar to the fifth prince's? As Wang Chong spoke, he raised his head and gazed at Consort Tai Zhen, who was seated on the throne. Wang Chong, shut your mouth. Your ladyship is of noble birth and is doted on by the holy emperor. How could you be the same as the fifth prince? Don't speak nonsense. Seeing that Wang Chong was about to become ridiculous if he continued speaking, Yang Zhao hurriedly spoke up to stop him. Humph, cousin, sit down and let him speak. I'd like to see just what he can say. Just how similar am I to the fifth prince? Consort Tai Zhen sneered. Wang Chong's thoughts couldn't be hidden from her. However, if he thought that a few casual words would change her mind and make her participate in the war of the princes, then his thinking was too simple. Even if the one who came today was that old master of the Wang clan, she still wouldn't change her mind. Your Highness, the elephant is too big. Even if it doesn't do anything, it can't do anything. Even if it doesn't do anything, the animals in the room will also feel threatened. Doesn't your ladyship feel that your current situation is the same? Even if you don't do anything, you're still a threat to the other concubines, consorts, and even the princes. If your ladyship doesn't participate in the war of the princes, will you really be safe? Chapter 420. Wang Chong was the first person who dared to say such words. Consort Tai Zhen's situation was actually very bad. Whether it was the Consort Tai Zhen incident or the Holy Emperor's favor, Consort Tai Zhen appeared to be boundlessly glorious on the surface, but in reality, whether it was in the court or the palace, Consort Tai Zhen was facing heavy pressure. In the court, there were still many officials who criticized her. Many people didn't object on the surface, but they were secretly very dissatisfied. Therefore, Consort Taizhen always tried to stay out of the court's affairs as much as possible, to avoid the dissatisfaction of those officials. And in the palace, Consort Taizhen suddenly rose to the throne, almost single-handedly snatching away all of the Holy Emperor's favor. Because of this, the Holy Emperor even wanted to go against all the officials. For many concubines and concubines, this was something they couldn't bear. If not for their misgivings about the Holy Emperor, who knew how many concubines and concubines in the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards would have long attacked her. Consort Taizhen was well aware of this, so in the vast palace, besides the vicinity of Consort Yuzhen, the imperial garden, and a few places she usually went, she always avoided the other concubines and concubines as much as possible. There was no relationship between them, much less any contact. The rejection and hostility in the palace was invisible, and Consort Taizhen could clearly feel the hostility from the various palaces and courtyards. This was also a taboo for her. No one had ever dared to speak like this in front of her, not even Yang Zhao. But Wang Chong had actually directly exposed her in such a bloody manner. Wang Chong, you're too impudent. Having been stabbed where it hurt by Wang Chong, Consort Taizhen's expression suddenly turned cold, like frost. Even Yang Zhao's expression changed, and he strenuously signaled to Wang Chong with his eyes. This bastard, is he crazy today? Even he didn't dare to say such words, because Consort Taizhen wasn't just his cousin anymore, she was also a concubine in the palace. Wang Chong was a little too bold. Ha, looks like I've been thinking too much. Although I've come for the 5th prince, I've also been thinking for the empress. Since your highness feels that this one is speaking nonsense, then this one, Wang Chong, will not say any more. I have disturbed your highness. Wang Chong will take his leave. Unexpectedly, when he saw Consort Taizhen was enraged, Wang Chong smiled with a calm expression. As he spoke, he cupped his hands and was about to leave. Buzz! Just as Wang Chong was about to leave, a voice suddenly came from above the hall, stopping Wang Chong. Wait! Stop right there. At the top of the hall, Consort Taizhen's gaze shifted. Although her expression was still as cold as ice, it was completely different from before. Wang Chong, since you say that you're thinking for this concubine, I'll give you a chance. Tell me, just how are you thinking for this concubine? If you can't give me a reasonable explanation, then don't blame this concubine for being impolite. These words were far beyond everyone's expectations. Yang Zhao shook his head and turned to look at Consort Taizhen, a hint of astonishment in his eyes. Only Wang Chong, with his back to Consort Taizhen, smiled. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Although Consort Taizhen was no longer the same as before, and her status was lofty, and after becoming a concubine, she had even more authority. But in the end, she was still a woman. She might not be interested in the 5th prince's matters, but she would definitely be interested in his matters. Ha, your highness. Wang Chong turned to face Consort Taizhen, quickly concealing the emotions in his eyes. Your highness, don't you feel that your current situation is very similar to the 5th prince's? The 5th prince suddenly recovered his martial arts, and your highness ascended to the position of a concubine. Both of you rose from humble beginnings, and both of you made others feel threatened, and both of you were ostracized by others. Wang Chong looked at the greatest beauty of the Tang dynasty and spoke calmly. Is this what you mean by thinking for this concubine? What you're saying is too far-fetched. I can't see any reason for me to take the risk and help the 5th prince. Consort Taizhen said bluntly. Her attitude toward the War of the Princes had not changed. She would avoid it if she could and stay away from it if she could. Wang Chong's words were not enough to make the 5th prince sacrifice so much. Moreover, she had no friendship with the 5th prince. Of course it's not worth it now. But in 100 years, when the new emperor ascends to the throne, what will your highness do then? Boom! Like a bolt of lightning striking down from the heavens, Wang Chong's simple words caused the expressions of Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao to change at the same time. From the beginning until now, this was what Wang Chong had said, and it was the words that had the greatest impact on the two of them. Wang Chong, how dare you? Consort Tai Zhen and Yang Zhao yelled at almost the same time. Even the two indifferent and mysterious beautiful women in white who had always been indifferent to Wang Chong by Consort Tai Zhen's sides could not help but look at the youth opposite them. 100 years for His Majesty. This kind of thing could not even be thought of normally, much less talked about. In front of these four people, Wang Chong's words were simply outrageous. Bastard! Are you cursing His Majesty? Consort Tai Zhen's eyes flashed coldly, and an enormous aura exploded from her body, striking fear into the hearts of others. Wang Chong did not mean that. But there is no ruler for 100 years, and there is no emperor for 1,000 years. This has always been the case since ancient times. Taizu and Taizong are no exceptions. No matter what, the new emperor will ascend to the throne in the future. Does your highness think that you will still be able to maintain your current position? Right now, with the holy emperor present, no one in the 6 palaces will act rashly. But when the new emperor ascends to the throne, what does your highness think will happen to the concubines of the 6 palaces? Wang Chong did not mean to be disrespectful. Please reconsider, your highness. Wang Chong said sincerely. His words made Consort Tai Zhen uneasy, and so did Yang Zhao. No matter how outrageous Wang Chong's words were, there was one thing he was right about. His Majesty was no longer young, and the eldest prince was already in his 30s. Discussing the succession of the crown prince was an urgent matter, and it had long been on the agenda. This was also a problem they had no choice but to face. When the holy emperor was present, no one dared to be impudent. But when the new emperor ascended to the throne, everything would be different. Yang Zhao might not be able to maintain her current wealth. Just like the holy emperor, he might not be able to protect her. And Consort Tai Zhen had another worry in her heart. Since ancient times, it was tradition to choose the eldest, not the youngest. Even if she was pregnant now, the ministers would definitely not allow her child to sit on the throne of the crown prince. This was also something that Consort Tai Zhen had always been afraid of, and at the same time did not dare to think about. The two of them had to admit that Wang Chong's words had stabbed at the weakest and most painful part of their hearts. Wang Chong, do you know that if I wanted to, I could throw you into the celestial prison right now? Consort Tai Zhen slowly raised her head and looked at Wang Chong said. This was the first time she had seen Wang Chong, but it was precisely this first time that Wang Chong had already angered her many times. And many of the things he had said were things that she was extremely afraid of, things that she would normally never allow anyone to mention in front of her. Ha, your highness. There are some things that wouldn't have happened if Wang Chong didn't say them. Wang Chong said. Consort Tai Zhen's expression was a little dazed. Once again, Wang Chong's words were impeccable. She wanted to get angry, but she couldn't bring herself to do so. Because Consort Tai Zhen knew that even though Wang Chong appeared to be outrageous, everything he had said was the truth, the things that she was worried would happen. Chapter 421. Yang Zhao was also a little absent-minded. He was also brimming with the desire for power, or else he wouldn't have entered the capital. He didn't mind getting involved in the War of the Princes, but Consort Tai Zhen didn't like others mentioning the matters of the imperial palace in front of him, so Yang Zhao had never brought them up. As time passed, he began to feel that it was nothing. Recently, he'd been riding the crest of success, and he'd been commanding the world, causing him to completely forget about those things. But Wang Chong's words suddenly reminded him. Just as Wang Chong had said, there were some matters that even if one didn't pay attention to them and didn't get involved, they would eventually appear in front of one. It would have been fine if it was just a normal matter, but if the War of the Princes involved Consort Tai Zhen, then it would affect his future. Little sister, although I also feel that the War of the Princes is no small matter and that we shouldn't get involved lightly, my sworn brother's words aren't without reason. But my sworn brother's words aren't without reason. It's impossible to completely stay out of it. Perhaps we should seriously consider this matter and discuss it before deciding what to do. Yang Zhao suddenly turned around and said. Let alone consort Tai Zhen, even Wang Chong was surprised by these words. After all, if Yang Zhao were to speak, the effect would be much greater. After all, they were cousins, and their relationship was much closer than his own. His words, which he had originally intended to use to convince consort Tai Zhen, had moved Yang Zhao, an unexpected gain. As expected, upon hearing Yang Zhao's words, consort Tai Zhen finally showed some interest. In the capital, the person she relied on the most was this cousin of hers. Big brother, the matters of the imperial palace are difficult to explain, and it's not something you can understand. Consort Tai Zhen had a scoundrel look on her face, her attitude much softer than before. In addition, the harem is not allowed to interfere in politics. This is a convention. His Majesty also doesn't like women in the harem to interfere too much. If I interfere too much, I'm afraid that His Majesty will be unhappy. Furthermore, I really can't see how my situation will benefit if I help the fifth prince. The first few sentences were directed at Yang Zhao, but the last few sentences were directed at Wang Chong. Ha ha ha. When Wang Chong heard this, he laughed. Your Highness, isn't it obvious? Among all the princes in the imperial harem, only the fifth prince was like the concubine. They were both innocent people without the slightest background. In the palace, no one helped him. He doesn't have any concubines or concubines behind him. Among all the princes in the imperial harem, only the fifth prince is someone that your highness can truly win over. If I'm not wrong, the mysterious person behind the fifth prince probably has something to do with you, right? As she said this, her eyes blinked, revealing a slight sharpness. It was as if she wanted to peer into the depths of Wang Chong's heart. Wang Chong's heart trembled, and he hurriedly lowered his head. Right now, most of the princes and concubines in the royal palace were guessing why the fifth prince had suddenly been reborn and could cultivate martial arts. They were also investigating the mysterious person behind him. If others were to find out that he was behind this, the entire Wang clan would probably be viewed as an enemy by all the princes, concubines, and concubines in the royal palace. Therefore, he tried his best to avoid meeting the fifth prince in public, lest others find out. When he met consort Tai Zhen, he also tried his best to avoid talking about his relationship with the fifth prince. However, consort Tai Zhen was clearly not as simple as the outside world thought, and she was definitely not someone who could be fooled easily. Wang Chong didn't even mention this point, but consort Tai Zhen had already guessed the truth behind it. Yes. Wang Chong replied without any hesitation. One should never overestimate a person, much less underestimate a person. Even though many people in the outside world thought that consort Tai Zhen was just a woman who relied on her beauty to rise to power and had no other merits, Wang Chong knew that this was definitely not true. An ordinary woman would never be able to endure as much criticism as she did and still be able to endure it. An ordinary woman would never be able to survive in the royal palace, which was filled with so many schemes and schemes. When many people saw consort Tai Zhen, they were easily attracted to Yang Zhao, thinking that she relied on Yang Zhao to take care of everything. However, Wang Chong knew that this was a grave mistake. Consort Tai Zhen had entered the royal palace before Yang Zhao had entered the capital and had successfully set down her roots. Regardless of whether she had Yang Zhao or not, she was definitely not as weak and useless as others imagined her to be. When a concubine smiles in the red dust, no one will know that she is a lychee. Concubine Tai Zhen wasn't as weak and easily deceived as others thought. Chapter 422. Women were always the type that were easily underestimated. It was precisely because he understood this that Wang Chong didn't deny it, nor did he hesitate in the slightest. Any action that one thought to be clever would ultimately be the victim of one's own ingenuity. Is it really you? The two of them were stunned by Wang Chong's words. Even Consort Taizhen didn't expect Wang Chong to admit to it so easily. It's me. Wang Chong admitted once more. Why? Consort Taizhen suddenly asked curiously. The Wang clan had already established a relationship with the first prince, and the first prince was likely to be the future heir apparent. Since ancient times, the rule of first prince wasn't something that could be said casually. Of the princes, the first prince had the highest chance of inheriting the throne. Consort Taizhen couldn't understand why Wang Chong would take such a huge risk to go against his big uncle just to help the fifth prince, who didn't seem to be of any benefit to the Wang clan. What is this Wang clan's Qilin son thinking? Consort Taizhen stared at Wang Chong with a glint in her eyes. She suddenly felt a strong sense of curiosity. It would be one thing if he was an ordinary person, but the person before her was Wang Chong. Regardless of whether it was his song of purity and peace, or his inconceivable feat of persuading the king of song to change his mind and support her when he entered the palace, or his actions in the regional commander's incident. Even the godlike supreme emperor, whom he revered the most, was full of praise for this young man who was only in his teens. Regardless of which angle she looked at it from, the young man before her wasn't an ordinary person. He couldn't be judged using common sense. Consort Taizhen suddenly wanted to know what drove this miracle. Why would this young man disregard the stance of his clan and the first prince to come to her Yuzhen palace to recommend the unknown fifth prince to her? How did he come up with such thoughts? Wang Chong glanced at the mysterious white-clothed beautiful women on both sides of Consort Taizhen. Consort Taizhen understood and raised her wrist slightly. The two of them understood and left respectfully. Soon, only Consort Taizhen, Yang Zhao, and Wang Chong were left in the room. It's very simple. It's because my thoughts are different from my uncle's. I think that the future crown prince is probably not the first prince, but His Highness the fifth prince. After the two white-clothed beautiful women left, Wang Chong shocked the world with a brilliant feat and said without the slightest hesitation. Wang Chong did not hide anything and immediately told him the secret he had discovered from the fifth prince. When Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao heard Wang Chong say that the fifth prince was the future son of heaven, they were already dumbfounded. When they heard that Li Heng's dragon-shaped supreme art was a five-fingered true dragon, the two of them were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Even Yang Zhao, who had the least understanding of the struggles in the palace, knew what a five-fingered true dragon meant. If Wang Chong leaked this secret, it would definitely cause an earth-shattering transformation in the palace. When the princes learned that Li Heng could suddenly cultivate martial arts, they were all filled with killing intent. If they knew that the Holy Emperor had passed on a five-fingered true dragon technique to him, even if it meant being punished by the Holy Emperor, they would definitely kill him. For a moment, the two cousins looked at the youth in the hall like they had seen a ghost. This was no ordinary news or intelligence report, but a massive secret that could alter the course of the War of the Princes. Although he was young, the intelligence in Wang Chong's grasp was so astonishing that even the most formidable king of spies would be flabbergasted. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Wang Chong said nothing, but his mind was in turmoil. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. In normal circumstances, he would never have told anyone about the fifth prince. But if the fifth prince wanted to survive this calamity, he needed Consort Taizhen's help. And if he wanted to truly obtain her help, there were some secrets that he had to tell her. Only this way could he obtain her trust. The facts proved that Wang Chong's risk had not been in vain. The shock on the faces of Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao was enough to show that his words had affected them. If one were to say that the fifth prince was just a young prince who didn't have much power at the start, then right now, his position in the hearts of Consort Taizhen and Yang Zhao had undoubtedly risen to a whole new level. Your Majesty, the War of the Princes is no small matter. It is not strange for your Majesty to be unable to quickly make a decision. This matter is not urgent, and your Majesty still has plenty of time to think. But Wang Chong still has a few words for your Majesty. I hope that your Majesty can open it after Wang Chong leaves. As Wang Chong spoke, he suddenly took out a letter that he had hidden in his sleeve. Strike while the iron is hot. Taking advantage of the fact that his words had taken effect on Consort Tai Zhen and the fact that the fifth prince's status in Consort Tai Zhen's eyes had greatly increased, Wang Chong took out his final trump card. Whether or not it could take effect on Consort Tai Zhen and make her completely decide to stand on the fifth prince's side would depend on this final letter. Wang Chong, what's the matter? Can't you tell me face to face? Do you really have to write a letter? Seeing the letter Wang Chong had taken out, Consort Tai Zhen had a strange expression on her face. It was something that could clearly be explained face to face, but Wang Chong had insisted on taking out a letter. Anyone who saw this would find it very strange. No. Your Majesty will understand after reading it. Wang Chong held the letter with both hands and shook his head. This time, he was abnormally determined. There were some things that could only be thought of, not done. There were some things that could only be seen, not spoken. I understand. Bring it over. Then Wang Chong will take his leave. Wang Chong handed over the letter and did not linger any longer. Before the palace gates completely closed, he left Yuzhen Palace. Almost at the same time that Wang Chong turned to leave, Consort Tai Zhen hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she could not hold back her curiosity and opened the letter. She pulled out the letter with the crooked handwriting. Wang. With just a single glance, Consort Tai Zhen's mind was thrown into disarray. A hint of panic flashed across her eyes. However, it was only for an instant before she concealed it. Other than herself, not even Yang Zhao, who was right next to her, noticed it. Little sister, what exactly did this brat write? Yang Zhao leaned over and glanced at the letter in her hands as he asked curiously. He was really very curious as to what exactly Wang Chong had insisted on writing on the letter and not saying it in front of him. It's nothing. To his surprise, Consort Tai Zhen, who had always trusted Yang Zhao and shared all her secrets with him, suddenly crushed both the letter and the envelope into powder. Before Yang Zhao could even catch a glimpse of a single word, the letter had already vanished into thin air. This had never happened before, left Yang Zhao flabbergasted. He stood there in a daze, somewhat at a loss as to what to do. Cousin, pass on my decree. Take one of my jade pendants and bestow it on 5th Prince Li Heng. Say that he performed the sword dance in front of the palace and performed to the Holy Emperor. I am very appreciative of his filial piety and have specially bestowed it to him. After saying this, Consort Tai Zhen turned and left, entering the inner hall. Behind her, Yang Zhao was dumbstruck. Even if you beat him to death, he still wouldn't understand what Consort Tai Zhen had seen in Wang Chong's letter for her to be in such a panic. Moreover, Consort Tai Zhen clearly hadn't made up her mind before. Why had she immediately changed her mind after reading Wang Chong's letter and decided to bestow a jade pendant on Li Heng? Moreover, she had even made it clear that she would pass on her decree. Wasn't this basically announcing to the entire palace that she would protect Prince Li Heng in the future? This was the exact opposite of his cousin's original intention of not lightly getting involved in the War of the Princes. Yes, this lowly subject will carry out the decree. Yang Zhao sighed, gave a deep bow, and then turned to leave. No matter what decision his little sister had made, he would do his utmost to carry it out. But what he couldn't understand was what sort of bewitching drug his sworn brother had fed Consort Tai Zhen for her to have such a massive change in attitude after reading a single letter. This sworn brother of mine really isn't someone a normal person can fathom. Yang Zhao sighed, unable to tell whether he was happy or sad, angry or happy. Shaking his head, he quickly walked out of Yuzhen Palace. He could almost imagine that after he left this place, there would probably be another earth-shattering wave in the depths of the palace. Given his cousin's current status, she would definitely be able to stir up another storm in the palace. Meanwhile, Consort Tai Zhen was walking through the depths of Yuzhen Palace, her mind in turmoil, frustrated. In her mind, Wang Chong's crooked handwriting replayed over and over again. Although the letter had been burned by her, the words on the letter became more and more profound, deeply imprinting themselves into her mind. Generally speaking, when one uses beauty to deal with others, when beauty fades, love flees, and flees leads to the end of kindness. In the letter Wang Chong had written to consort Tai Zhen, there was nothing else, only this simple line that had no head or tail. Although it was simple, consort Tai Zhen already understood Wang Chong's meaning. This line had not been created by Wang Chong, but more than 1,000 years ago in the Great Qin Empire. At the time, when a lobbyist of the Qin Empire had persuaded the most favored Madame Hua Yang to accept Qin Yiren as her adopted son, he had said these words. And the latter would one day become the future heir apparent of the Great Qin Empire, giving birth to the first emperor in the history of the Central Plains, first Emperor Yingzheng, just like the current Holy Emperor. Madame Hua Yang had no children, but she doted on her son, just like her. Qin Yiren, on the other hand, wandered the world without anyone to rely on and was not valued, just like fifth Prince Li Heng. But all these metaphors could not compare to the simple line on the surface of the letter. Generally speaking, when one uses beauty to deal with others, when beauty fades, love flees, and flees leads to the end of kindness. Consort Tai Zhen was well aware of how she had risen to her current position, which was why she was so anxious, which was why Wang Chong's words had such a great impact on her. Wang Chong had said so many things and revealed so many secrets, but none of them could compare to the shock that these words had given her. Because this truly was the greatest worry and taboo in the depths of her heart that she had never mentioned to anyone. Wang Chong, I hope that this consort did not make an error in judgment. Chapter 423. Congratulations to user for participating in the War of the Princes, participating in the True Dragon Project, and changing 5th Prince Li Heng's fate. You are rewarded 15 points of destiny energy. As Wang Chong walked out of the imperial palace in the darkness and closed the gate behind him, a voice he had not heard in a long time resounded in his mind. With this voice and a light breeze, an invisible energy poured into Wang Chong's body from the depths of spacetime. Wang Chong felt his entire body warm. I've finally succeeded. Upon hearing this voice, Wang Chong's lips curled into a smile. He knew that his final letter had been effective. When dealing with those and experts in the practice ground, Wang Chong had already obtained 15 points of destiny energy. With the addition from consort Tai Zhen, Wang Chong had obtained 30 points of destiny energy in a single day. At this point, Wang Chong had accumulated 109 points of destiny energy. Adding on the destiny energy he had used to exchange for metal bone, gold organs, help 5th Prince Li Heng change his blood, and use the world energy restriction several times, Wang Chong had accumulated more than 200 points of destiny energy. And for Wang Chong, when he had accumulated 200 points of destiny energy, it represented a completely new meaning. I can finally exchange for origin energy items. As Wang Chong walked along the stone street, he gave a long sigh of relief, his mind incredibly relaxed. The Stone of Destiny's rewards were divided into heart, physique, energy, technique, and power. But because he didn't have enough destiny energy, Wang Chong had only been able to exchange for iron bones, panther bones, gold organs, and blood transformation. If he wanted to increase his origin energy, Wang Chong could only buy pills from the imperial clan in the imperial city. But once he unlocked the origin energy rewards, things would be different. This meant that Wang Chong could use destiny energy to exchange for origin energy rewards that could increase his strength. In this way, Wang Chong's strength would grow much faster. Young master. The sound of footsteps came from the darkness, interrupting Wang Chong's thoughts. The eagle had a large eagle perched on its shoulder, and it was striding over from afar. How is it? It's fine now. Wang Chong smiled and gestured that everything was going well. Once the matter of consort Tai Zhen was settled, the 5th prince would have nothing to worry about. Although no one dared to say that they were definitely safe, with consort Tai Zhen's protection, at least everyone had something to worry about. Even the 1st prince and the 3rd prince would not dare to act recklessly. Come, let's go back to the training camp. Grabbing the warhorse from the hands of the Wang clan guards behind the eagle, Wang Chong leapt onto its back. Everything was on the right path, and the fifth prince had also embarked on his own path to fight for the throne. Now, it was time for his own plan. Now that the deflecting blade manner had developed to this stage, it was time to move on to the next step of the plan. I just wonder how Dusong Mengpoj is doing. As he gazed at the dark sky and the tens of thousands of lanterns in the city, Wang Chong thought of the Uzun great general Dusong Mengpoj who had been traveling incognito, and a smile appeared on his lips. This Uzun great general was an existence that would cause the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains to feel a deep headache. This person was not only powerful in martial arts, but also extremely intelligent. Thus, even a hero like Geshu Han, who had ruled over the Tang dynasty and ruled over the Uzun border, had been helpless against him. However, now that Wang Chong had seen through his identity in the capital, he probably wouldn't be so lucky. Run, run. Let's see if you'll be so lucky. With a faint smile, Wang Chong urged his horse toward deflecting blade manor. Gallop. A strong horse hoof stomped down, kicking up a cloud of dust. While Wang Chong was rushing to deflecting blade manor, 60-some li away from the Tang dynasty's capital, a group of Uzun cavalry was galloping toward the Uzun plateau. Ever since Wang Chong had exposed them on the practice ground, Dusong Mengpoj and the others had not even returned to their guest house. They had fled the capital of the Tang dynasty and fled through the night to the Uzun plateau. Hurry! The Tang dynasty is no longer safe. Only by returning to the plateau can we completely escape this danger. On his horse, Dusong Mengpoj had a solemn expression as he urged the cavalry forward. Great General, could we be thinking too much? Could the Tang dynasty have never thought about dealing with us? After all, we've already been 60-some li away from the Tang dynasty, and nothing has happened. An Uzun commander raised his head and said with a sliver of hope. Ever since they had left the practice ground, Great General Dusong Mengpoj had been urging them on. It wasn't that he doubted the Great General's judgment and prestige, but that they had encountered nothing on their journey. Other than their suspicions, there was only the howling of the wind from the hills on their sides. It seemed like they were just scaring themselves. Perhaps not in the past, but it's different now. I also hope that I'm just being paranoid, but that's impossible. Dusong Mengpoj sternly said. From the moment he had left the capital of the Tang dynasty, he had felt like someone was locking onto him from afar, constantly coveting and following him. This feeling had only just begun, but Dusong Mengpoj did not dare to be careless. A centipede dies but never falls down. The current Tang dynasty was far from being as domineering and powerful as it was in the past. But amongst the elites and upper echelons of this massive empire, there were still some extremely formidable individuals that could not be underestimated. That youth of the Central Plains on the plaza was the best example. There were many times when Dusong Mengpoj had wanted to kill him, but in the end, he had managed to restrain himself. Although he didn't know the exact origins of that youth, he was certain that he had an extraordinary background. There were many times when that youth had been intentionally provoking him, forcing him to attack. Dusong Mengpoj was well aware of his opponent's intentions. As long as he killed that youth, the Tang dynasty would have more than enough evidence to attack him in the capital. If that really happened, just as that youth had said, he might not even be able to walk out of the Tang dynasty's capital. That youth's prediction had been spot on. I originally believed that the Central Plains had declined on this trip to the Tang dynasty, but I didn't expect to encounter such a monstrous youth on the last day. The fate of the Central Plains still hasn't run out yet. Dusong Mengpoj couldn't help but sigh. The first prince had swapped places with his cavalry, having his subordinates assume his identity to meet with the Holy Emperor of the Tang dynasty. This matter had been so secretive that no one knew of it other than his own party. Not even the ministers of the Tang dynasty had seen through it. Dusong Mengpoj had originally believed that no one would see through the first prince's trick until he returned to the plateau. Who would have thought that the young man would be able to see through their plans so easily and kill the cavalryman in front of everyone without any hesitation, dampening the prestige of their group? Of course, if that was all there was to it, it would have been fine. After all, this was a trick that the first prince had played on a whim, a game. But the youth had been able to expose his identity with a single glance. This was what truly shocked Dusong Mangpoj. If the one who had done this had been some renowned figure of the Tang dynasty, he would have been able to accept it. But given the youth's age, he could never have met him, much less recognized him. For the identity he had maintained for more than 3 months to be exposed in such a manner was truly unexpected for Dusong Mangpoj. Great General, I'm sorry. I've implicated you. At this moment, a voice came from the side. Dusong Mangpoj turned his head and saw an Uzun cavalry looking at him in shame. First Prince, there's no need to be so polite. I was the one who made this decision in the first place. Coming to the Tang dynasty was to continue my dream of many years, and it has nothing to do with you. First Prince, there's no need to blame yourself. Dusong Mangpoj grinned and waved his hand, unconcerned. This shamefaced Uzun cavalry was naturally the true Uzun first prince. The Uzun people were fierce and ferocious, and they worshipped martial prowess. The Uzun first prince was a proud person who would not easily apologize to others. But the first prince also knew that this matter was no trifling matter. If a great general of the Tang dynasty were to stealthily infiltrate the Uzun Empire would definitely do its utmost to keep them here. This was clearly the situation that Dusong Mangpoj was facing. Although the others were still doubtful and unsure if someone was really targeting them, the Uzun first prince knew that the elites of the Tang dynasty would never let go of this chance. And if he hadn't been too proud and thought himself clever, causing this martial arts competition in the practice ground, he would never have fallen to this level. It could be said that if anything happened to Dusong Mangpoj, it would all be his responsibility. The Uzun Empire had 1 million soldiers, but it only had a scant few great generals. If something happened to Dusong Mangpoj in the Tang dynasty, it would be a massive stain on this operation, and it would even severely threaten his right to succeed the Tsenpo. This was the true reason for the first prince's unease. Listen to me. As long as we are within the borders of the Tang dynasty's capital, the Tang dynasty will not dare to move against us. But once we are a certain distance away from the capital, things will be different. If something happens to us, the Tang dynasty will be able to push the blame onto someone else. And in order to deal with me, they will definitely move against you. Because this is the only way to explain things on the surface. This is why I am escorting all of you out of the capital. In a little while, don't take the main road. Once you leave this place, choose a clear direction. You can't turn back until you reach the Uzun Plateau. Dusong Mangpoj said, his voice tinged with an ominous aura. General, will you not be coming with us? An Uzun cavalry commander suddenly sensed something and raised his head. Of course he can't go with you. Before Dusong Mangpoj could reply, a voice came from the side of the road. The voice was so sudden that everyone jumped in fright. Who is it? Who's sneaking around? Hurry and get out here. The crowd fell into an uproar, and the Uzun cavalry seemed to be provoked. They all turned around, pulled out their shining scimitars, and aimed them at the source of the voice. Whoosh! A light breeze blew past and the wind blew. Diagonally in front of the crowd, a cold figure wearing clothes as white as snow and a ribbon fluttered in the wind. His hands were clasped behind his back as he slowly walked out from the pine forest. This seemingly thin body exuded an aura as vast as the mountains and seas. Bang! A silver boot lightly stepped on the ground, causing the earth to quake. The energy in a radius of several thousand zhang suddenly changed. All the grass, trees, branches, and leaves began to exude a needle-like aura as they aimed at Dusong Mangpoj's group on the official road. Nay! Chapter 424. It's you. Dusong Mangpo's expression chilled as he stared at that elegant white-clothed figure. This was the only thought left in his mind. Dusong Mangpo knew who this person was. In the capital of the Tang dynasty, this person was undoubtedly the leader of the Confucian school. Even in the capital of the Tang dynasty, this person was an influential figure. Although he was not a great general, his influence was not one bit inferior to a great general of the Central Plains like Geshu Han. He could only win, not fall behind. Dusong Mangpo had never imagined that the Tang dynasty would send such a person to kill him. Ha, it's me. This person's face was like jade, and despite the deep wrinkles at the corners of his eyes, he seemed to be in his 50s or 60s, but his appearance was that of a man in his 30s or 40s. A long sword hung from his waist, and a bell hung from it. The bells fluttered in the wind and clashed against the silver scabbard, producing a clear and melodious sound. Dusong Mangpo felt like he was facing a powerful foe, and he was a gentle and frail man. The emperor of the Tang dynasty truly thinks highly of me, Dusong Mangpo solemnly said as he looked at the newcomer. Ha, great general has shown such sincerity to travel such a great distance to the capital. No matter what, we must properly entertain you. 10 years ago, great general traveled incognito. This Li came in a hurry and did not have the time to entertain you. This time, no matter what, we must sit down and drink with general. The white-clothed middle-aged man with a sword hanging on his waist said as he slowly walked forward. The leaves, the tips of the grass, and the needle-like sword intent that pierced through the air became even more formidable. This feeling of having a dagger pressed against their backs made all the Uzun cavalry, including the first prince, feel uneasy, their hair standing on end. The Uzun did not fear the bloody charge of the battlefield. However, the scene in front of them had clearly exceeded the scope of an ordinary battlefield. You've come for me. Can you let them go? Dusong Mangpo knew that no matter what, it would be difficult to resolve this matter peacefully. Right now, he only hoped that he could attract the attention of the person in front of him so that the others could have a way out. I'm fine with it. However, whether or not they could escape with their lives depended on themselves. After all, I'm not the only one here today. The middle-aged man in white said with a profound tone. He did not even look at the first prince and his men, as if the Uzun cavalry were just some small fries. For a moment, all the Uzun cavalrymen felt humiliated, but at the same time, they felt relieved. This sigh was too powerful, so powerful that they couldn't even muster the will to resist. The gap between the two sides was simply incalculable. Understood. What are you waiting for? Hua. Everyone understood and quickly dispersed in all directions. Even the first prince of Uzun was panicking. More than a dozen people split into more than a dozen directions, panicking like stray dogs. In just a short while, they disappeared into the dense forest. Just as Dusong Mangpo had ordered, not a single one of the 10-some cavalrymen chose the smooth path. Dusong Mangpo remained motionless until the first prince and his men were far away. Only then did he turn to the leader of the Tang dynasty's Confucian school. Come. Dusong Mangpo said to the other side. Everything was unavoidable, and now, he had stepped forward. As general wishes, the dangerous and terrifying middle-aged man faintly smiled, and then, under Dusong Mangpo's gaze, he stepped forward with a silver boot. Boom! A moment later, a huge tornado-like light pillar suddenly rose into the sky with a loud rumble. The bright light mixed with the sounds of dragons and elephants turned the sky into day. And when the destructive energy contained in this pillar of light was released, all the trees in a radius of 10-some li were instantly turned to ash. This was a heaven-shaking battle. Wang Chong learned of this news 2 days later. A diplomatic mission from the Uzun Empire was returning from the Tang dynasty to the Uzun. When it passed through Longxi and entered the border, it was suddenly attacked by a Turkic force. Other than the Uzun first prince and a few Uzun warriors, no one else was able to escape. The Tang dynasty expressed its deep apologies for this matter. In addition, it stated that although the first prince and his men had not been attacked in the territory of the Tang dynasty, it would strengthen its efforts to exterminate the Turkic forces that had infiltrated the border. As for the person that Wang Chong was most concerned about, Uzun Great General Dusong Mangpoj, no one in the Tang dynasty, from the imperial court to the common people, talked about him. It was like this Uzun Great General had never appeared. And this was indeed the case. Dusong Mangpoj's name was not on the list of the Uzun Empire's diplomatic mission. He had been replaced by some obscure Uzun soldier. Since he had never come, how could he talk about it? When Wang Chong heard the news from the eagle, he couldn't help but laugh. There were still many capable people in the imperial court who knew how to play these games. Thus, politics was always the dirtiest game, no matter where it was. However, Wang Chong had asked around and used the influence of his clan to find out a little information on Dusong Mangpoj. Dusong Mangpoj had succeeded in escaping, but he had been heavily injured. Given his injuries, it would be a very long time before the border between the Tang dynasty and the Uzun Empire would see this influential great general of the Uzun Empire. What a pity! Even so, he still managed to escape. In the pavilion of Deflecting Blade Manor, Wang Chong sat on the ground, slamming the letter in his hand onto the table, a look of regret on his face. Dusong Mangpoj had only been heavily injured after his identity had been exposed. This was completely different from what Wang Chong had expected. If this Uzun Great General could die in the territory of the Tang dynasty, Wang Chong might be able to obtain a reward of energy points that could change his fate. But Wang Chong was also well aware that Dusong Mangpoj was on the same level as Geshu Han, Fomin Linta, Gao Xianji, and Zhang Shougui. It wasn't too difficult for such a person to heavily injure them, but killing them was no easy task. After all, the strength of an imperial great general could not be underestimated. Moreover, if they wanted to escape, it would not be easy to stop them. But no matter what, without the presence of a powerful figure like the Uzun, the western border of the empire would be much more peaceful. The pressure on Geshu Han would also lessen. In this aspect, Wang Chong had inadvertently helped Geshu Han greatly. Forget it. Heavily injuring him is already pretty good. If I really want to kill him, I'll have to do it on the real battlefield. As these thoughts ran through his mind, Wang Chong quickly calmed down. Dipping his pen in ink, he began to write again. Bright will scripture. After writing down this name on the first line, Wang Chong's mind began to swiftly recall it, and then these memories transformed into a scripture that fell onto the paper. Transcribing the techniques and scriptures in his memory. In truth, Deflecting Blade Manor already had a few of Wang Chong's transcriptions, but these were far from enough. What Wang Chong needed to do was establish a scripture repository unique to Deflecting Blade Manor. Only in this way could Deflecting Blade Manor be complete, and only in this way could Wang Chong establish a complete set of advantages. Furthermore, even when Wang Chong was no longer around, Deflecting Blade Manor would still be able to continuously absorb talents and provide them to the Empire. With Wang Chong's foresight, experience, and fighting prowess, as well as the massive pool of students and strength within reach of the Kunwa training camp, not only would those who joined Deflecting Blade Manor be able to learn the art of war and cultivate in the spirit vein, they would also be able to learn a large number of cultivation techniques that couldn't be easily learned elsewhere. Furthermore, Deflecting Blade Manor spanned across the 3 great training camps, and the network of connections it had slowly built up would also be able to swiftly send the talents of Deflecting Blade Manor to their respective specialties. Only by making full use of these resources would he be able to swiftly rewrite the history of the Tang dynasty's gradual decline and shake up the entire structure of the Central Plains. The strength of a single person was simply too weak. Only by gathering the strength of everyone could he rewrite an era and rewrite the fate of the empire. Although Deflecting Blade Manor was small, to Wang Chong, it was the fulcrum where he could gather the strength of everyone and rewrite the fate of an era. Tossing aside a book that could calm one's mind and subdue one's inner demons, Wang Chong beckoned the eagle over. Take these books and bring them to the underground scripture cavern. The scripture pavilion hadn't been completed yet, and Deflecting Blade Manor didn't have the ability to protect itself. For the time being, they could only be stored in the underground cavern of Deflecting Blade Manor. But Gongzi, the eagle, who had always been obedient to Wang Chong, unexpectedly stopped in his tracks, showing no intention of obeying Wang Chong. That person is currently in the scripture cavern. Isn't this a little inconvenient? Ha, isn't that even better? With him around, there won't be any worries in the scripture cavern. Isn't that even better? Wang Chong raised his head and faintly smiled. Wang Chong knew who the eagle was referring to. The only person who dared to barge into his Deflecting Blade Manor, completely disregarding his fate, and the only one who dared to make others angry was the future invincible great general Li Sai. A few days ago, when Li Sai came to look for Wang Chong, he had inadvertently barged into the underground cavern. Initially, Li Sai had been disdainful of the scriptures written by Wang Chong. How formidable could the scriptures written by a brat who was still wet behind his ears be? But after flipping through a few of the scriptures, Li Sai's attitude changed completely. From then on, Li Sai stayed in the cavern. He was a courageous and loyal official, but he was also a martial maniac who viewed martial arts as his own life. Wang Chong was well aware of this, so he lifted the ban. Not only did he allow Li Sai to stay in the cavern to flip through all of his scriptures, he even sent him 3 meals a day so that he could focus on reading through the books. In truth, Li Sai could now be considered half a guardian of Wang Chong's scriptures. Chapter 425. Gongzi, that's not what I meant. The eagle panicked. Although the young master has already allowed him to read all the scriptures in the sutra storage cave, and he even helped us retrieve the Hyderabad ore, but even if we want to repay him, letting him read so many scriptures is already enough. Shouldn't we keep this a secret for now? I know Gongzi admires him, but he's going to leave eventually. He's not the same kind of person as us. In the eagle's mind, his Gongzi had always been an intelligent person. But for some reason, he was especially confused about the matter of Li Sai. Ha ha ha, seeing that the eagle was really panicking, Wang Chong couldn't help but laugh. He hadn't realized before that the eagle could be quite cute at times. Wang Chong knew that the eagle was thinking for him. If he wanted to conquer the world or make a meteoric rise in the imperial court, the eagle's thoughts were not wrong at all. But this time, the eagle was really wrong. The more scriptures the invincible General Li Sai read, the more he learned, the better it would be for himself and the future of the empire. Wang Chong was only afraid that he would read too little, but he wasn't afraid that he would read too much. The reason why he had included a high-level scripture like Ming Luan Tai, which could subdue inner demons and calm the mind, was because he was afraid that he would read too much, bite off more than he could chew, and go berserk. Wang Chong believed that with Li Sai's personality, he would definitely read this scripture. The eagle, don't worry. I have my own plans for Li Sai's matter, it won't cause us any losses. Let him be. Wang Chong waved his hand, smiling. The eagle hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. Although he still felt that something was wrong, he chose to believe in Wang Chong's judgment. Taking the scriptures that Wang Chong had transcribed from the table, the eagle hugged them under his ribs. He bid farewell to Wang Chong and quickly turned to leave, heading for the underground sutra cavern. After the eagle left, Wang Chong also calmed down. Almost there, after a moment of silence, Wang Chong put the brush back on the brush holder. The scriptures in the scripture cave had accumulated quite a lot, and they were basically in their embryonic form. What was more important now was his own strength. I've already accumulated 109 points of destiny energy last time. It's about time to exchange it for the vitality type of reward. Wang Chong thought to himself as he recalled the stone of destiny. Before this, Wang Chong had been exchanging for items related to the body and physical skills. But now, he could finally exchange for items of a higher level. The room was extremely silent. Without his destiny, ordinary people would not dare enter this place easily. With a thought, Wang Chong immediately communicated with the Stone of Destiny in his mind. Wang. At the next moment, a light screen unfurled in front of Wang Chong. A brand new content appeared in front of Wang Chong. Vitality Pill, exchange for 10 points. Able to increase a warrior's vitality. Only useful for warriors at the vitality rank. Can be raised up to vitality rank 9. At the same time, it can permanently and weekly increase the warrior's vitality flow speed and affinity with Heaven-Earth vitality. Note, vitality pills effects decrease according to the number consumed. This was the first time Wang Chong saw the exchange content for vitality. For the first time, a low-grade pill appeared in front of Wang Chong. Furthermore, the price was extremely low. Although the restrictions were huge, only warriors at the vitality rank could use it. It was almost useless for the current Wang Chong. Even so, its effects were still extremely obvious. Permanently increasing the flow of Yuan Qi within a martial artist's body and their affinity with Heaven and Earth Yuan Qi. Just this alone caused the value of this pill to increase exponentially. Increasing the vitality flow speed meant that one's attacks would be faster and more explosive. At the same time, it would give one an advantage in a protracted battle. Increasing one's affinity with Heaven-Earth vitality meant that one's strength would grow faster when cultivating. Even though these two aspects only increased one's strength slightly, just based on these two aspects, even if the vitality pill was useless to those at the true martial realm and above, it was still extremely valuable. This pill can be exchanged for when necessary. It can be used as a reward for Zhao Jingdian and the others to increase their strength. Looking at the content on the light screen in his mind, Wang Chong fell into deep thought. As the saying goes, a slight difference could lead to a huge error. Even though it was just a slight difference, when both sides were facing a bottleneck and were at the same cultivation realm, this slight difference was often a qualitative change. And in an intense confrontation, where soldiers fought against soldiers and generals fought against generals, the difference in the speed of Yuan Qi flow often brought about the difference between life and death. Just based on this, Wang Chong decided to exchange an origin energy pill for each of the core members of the Deflecting Blade Manor in the future without affecting his own business. With a thought from Wang Chong, the content on the light screen changed and continued to show new content. This time, it was related to stellar energy. Stellar energy sharpness changes the nature of stellar energy and increases its sharpness. The effect of level 1 aura of sharpness would increase every third exchange. And so on and so forth. Exchange points, 15. This simple paragraph of content made Wang Chong's eyelids twitch. The effect of the Essence Qi pill was already very amazing, but the content of this paragraph was even more effective. It can actually change the nature of stellar energy. It's unbelievable. Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the ground, his heart pounding rapidly. He had originally thought that it would be good enough if he could obtain a few pills that could increase his stellar energy, but he hadn't expected the Stone of Destiny to be able to directly change the nature of stellar energy. This was far more than Wang Chong had expected. 3 exchanges actually give me the effect of a level 1 aura. This is equivalent to gaining a halo out of thin air. This effect is truly astonishing. Wang Chong was truly shocked by the Stone of Destiny's origin energy reward. Although a level 1 aura was the lowest of halos and didn't change much, Wang Chong could keenly sense a hidden value in it. This ability was not controlled by one's cultivation level. In other words, as long as one had enough destiny energy, one could obtain a high-level halo at Tier 1 of the true martial realm, then Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, or even Tier 5 or Tier 6. The only problem was that although this reward seemed generous, the price was astonishingly high. A complete level 1 aura of destiny required 45 points of destiny energy. With the amount of destiny energy that Wang Chong had accumulated, this was no small burden. This sort of expenditure was not something that Wang Chong could squander without limit or easily expend. Moreover, different levels of halos required different levels of accumulation. From level 1 to level 2, one might only need to accumulate one level of halo, but from level 2 to level 3, it would not be so simple. From level 3 to level 4, and from level 4 to level 5, the levels required were even higher. Basically, being able to exchange for one level 1 halo is already pretty good. Wang Chong thought to himself. He quickly weighed the practical use of this aura sharpness effect. Like the origin energy pill, this aura sharpness effect could only help a martial artist gain a slight advantage when facing opponents of the same cultivation level. From this point of view, Wang Chong didn't need to exchange for a complete level 1 aura sharpness at all. The truly sensible and reasonable method was to exchange for a third of the halo's effect. Wang Chong's gaze focused, but he quickly composed himself and continued reading. The item that appeared this time was completely different from the previous 2 times. Aura piercing changes the nature of a martial artist's aura piercing, allowing the martial artist's inner energy to have a weak chance of ignoring the opponent's defense, penetrating the aura barrier and blasting into the opponent's body. Can ignore the opponent's level by 3 levels, upgradable. Upgradable requirement, complete trial challenge. Points to exchange, 45 points. Note, aura piercing can be exchanged without limit, and the higher the level, the higher the chance of ignoring the opponent's defense, and the higher the gap in the opponent's level. When the aura piercing reaches a certain level, it can permanently ignore the opponent's defense, and will definitely succeed in piercing through the opponent's aura. Seeing these resplendent words on the screen, Wang Chong's eyes finally lit up. Up until now, this was the most tempting ability of all the Stone of Destiny he had ever seen. Although the Stone of Destiny didn't say that this ability could increase a martial artist's strength, for those with keen senses, the effect of this aura piercing was definitely much stronger than any of the previous abilities. Out of all the Vitality-type Destiny rewards, up until now, this was the ability that moved Wang Chong the most. In terms of strength, he could think of ways to increase it in the future, but this aura-piercing property was something that couldn't be cultivated no matter what. Wang Chong had stored so many techniques in his mind, but he had never heard of any that had the effect of aura-piercing. This ability was definitely the only way to defeat a powerful opponent and challenge someone of a higher level. Only, the amount of points to exchange for aura-piercing was too high, amounting to 45 points of destiny energy. It was even higher than the blood exchange function that Wang Chong had exchanged for. But compared to its unique piercing ability, it was worth it no matter what. There's no need to choose, this is the ability. With a thought, Wang Chong unhesitatingly exchanged for the aura-piercing effect on the screen. Thunderclap. Inexorably, a lightning-like force flew out of the Stone of Destiny and entered Wang Chong's body. In the next moment, thunderclouds roiled in the pavilion. Wang Chong's ears seemed to be struck by tens of thousands of lightning serpents. A violent force filled with the nature of lightning seeped into Wang Chong's stellar energy. Like a drop of water falling into oil, the stellar energy in Wang Chong's body suddenly boiled. A completely new, unprecedented stellar energy attribute was bestowed upon Wang Chong's stellar energy. In the blink of an eye, the feeling in Wang Chong's body had completely changed. If Wang Chong's stellar energy had been a calm stream at the beginning, then it had now become a rapid torrent. Chapter 426. This stellar energy, sensing the changes in his body, Wang Chong fell into deep thought. Bang! In the next moment, without any warning, Wang Chong suddenly slammed his palm onto the table. The scene of the table being smashed into smithereens did not appear. Wang Chong raised his hand, and a thumb-sized hole appeared on the tough red sandalwood. Through the hole, he could see that the energy had even pierced through the floor and into the next room. So this is stellar energy piercer. Wang Chong stared at the hole on the red sandalwood table, deep in thought. In the instant he struck, Wang Chong could clearly sense a portion of the stellar energy in his palm suddenly condense into a spiral shape. Its penetrative power and sharpness suddenly multiplied, allowing it to pierce through the tough red sandalwood. In terms of sharpness alone, that portion of energy was already equivalent to Wang Chang's sword qi. However, its penetrative power had multiplied. This ability is actually very similar to sword qi, but its destructive power is still somewhat lacking. Against top-class experts, the threat it poses is still very limited. If I can combine this ability with sword qi, using sword qi to replace normal stellar energy, the power will definitely multiply. Wang Chang's sharp intuition in the field of martial arts allowed him to quickly sense the hidden ability of this stellar energy piercer. Swoosh! In the next moment, Wang Chong raised his finger and pointed at the distant wall. However, something embarrassing happened. What Wang Chong had expected did not happen. Nothing rushed out from Wang Chang's finger. Damn, I forgot that there's a certain chance of triggering stellar energy piercer. Wang Chong sat there in a daze. As he recalled something, he felt very awkward. He had been so happy with it that he had forgotten that the stellar energy piercer was not something that could be controlled. The Stone of Destiny had changed the nature of his stellar energy, and it wasn't as simple as changing its shape and spinning it in a spiral. Next, Wang Chong sat there, his finger continuously tapping out. On the 16th tap, boom. Finally, a scorching white bolt of stellar energy shot out from Wang Chang's fingertip like a bolt of lightning, blasting out a huge hole in the opposite wall. The huge commotion also attracted the attention of the other students in deflecting blade manner, and a commotion could be heard from outside. However, it was quickly suppressed by the eagle. Only Wang Chong could cause such a huge commotion in that room. No matter what happened, it wasn't worth making a fuss about. When Wang Chong heard the commotion outside slowly die down, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, but he quickly regained his composure. This kind of destructive power. Even when facing an expert at Tier 5 of the true martial realm, it's enough to cause fatal danger. Looking at the hole in the opposite wall, Wang Chong nodded in satisfaction. Although he had only shot out a bolt of qi, when paired with the stellar energy piercer's spiral energy, its destructive power was multiplied tenfold. In other words, even without the aid of the charge of the warhorse, Wang Chong could still use his own stellar energy to injure an expert at Tier 5 of the true martial realm. Moreover, Wang Chong made another discovery. Although the Stone of Destiny didn't specify the probability of triggering the stellar energy piercer, only saying that it's very weak, based on its effects, it should be triggered once every 16 times. In other words, the probability is around 5%. Wang Chong sat cross-legged on the ground, his eyes shining with the light of wisdom. There were many things that didn't need to be explained. As long as one was smart enough, they could be learned through trial and error. A 5% probability seemed very low, and it was basically impossible to trigger with a single palm strike. But if the battle was intense enough and there were enough palm strikes, then when the number reached a certain level, the number of times the stellar energy piercer would appear would be stable enough. And if one was good at calculation, then Wang Chong could completely control the stellar energy piercer to appear at any time he wanted. Whoosh! With a thought, Wang Chong tapped out with his finger again. Wang Chong continued to experiment, and the final result verified Wang Chang's judgment. The probability of the stellar energy piercer appearing was indeed around 5%. As long as one used this probability well, it would be very effective. Whoa! Just as he was cultivating in the pavilion, a sudden burst of cheers came from outside. This sudden commotion attracted Wang Chang's attention. With a thought, Wang Chong suddenly stood up, pushed open the door, and walked out. The next moment, even though Wang Chong was calm, he froze at the door. Outside the door, the sky was cold and gloomy. At some point, large snowflakes had begun to fall from the sky. It's snowing! In a daze, Wang Chong stretched out a finger and caught a snowflake drifting down from the sky, a dazed look on his face. When one's martial arts reached a certain level, one would gradually feel cold. Unknowingly, it had been more than a year since he reincarnated and arrived in this world. A year. Wang Chong muttered to himself as he exhaled a breath of cold air that had turned to frost. Even though it had only been a year, Wang Chong felt that it was as cold as snow. Ha ha ha, it's snowing, it's snowing. The deflecting blade manor was bustling with activity, and even the distant Kunwa training camp was filled with cheers. Crowds of people were moving about on the mountain tops. Horse racing, pole climbing, sparring, archery. Everyone was cheering excitedly amidst the snowflakes. The snow was heavy and dense. In just a few moments, the world was covered in a haze, and the mountains and trees were covered in a thin layer of snow. From afar, it was as beautiful as a painting. Gallop, gallop. Amidst the wind and snow, a warhorse suddenly whizzed over. The sound of the horse's hooves pierced through the wind and rain, sounding exceptionally loud. A Wang clan guard hurriedly galloped over the hill into Deflecting Blade Manor, and then dismounted in front of Wang Chang's pavilion. This strange action immediately attracted Wang Chang's attention, as well as the attention of the other examinees in the courtyard. Young Master Liang has returned. The guard kneeled on the ground, his hands clenched into fists. After taking several deep breaths, he finally managed to say these words. What? Wang Chong had only been casually glancing at the guard, but upon hearing these words, his entire body trembled as if struck by lightning, his face filled with disbelief. What did you say? Say it again. Reporting to Young Master Liang has returned from overseas. We've already received a letter from him saying that he will be returning to the capital in the next few days. The guard knelt on the ground and repeated his words. Bang! Like a stone stirring 1,000 ripples, Wang Chong clenched his fists in his sleeves. His robe began to sway in the wind. In the entire Wang clan, there was only one person known as Young Master Liang. It was Wang Chang's older cousin, Wang Liang, who had been sent overseas and had not been heard from for more than half a year. Wang Liang had returned. He had finally returned from his overseas voyage. This could be considered the best news that Wang Chong had heard today. Wonderful. Wang Chong's face was red, and he was so excited that he almost jumped up from the ground. Where's the letter? Let me see it. A letter stained with seawater and sweat quickly fell into Wang Chong's hands. The constant sea breeze and damp weather had caused the letter to appear wrinkled and dirty. Wang Chong did not read it carefully, instead flipping to the last page of the letter. When he saw the image of a tiny flame drawn in fresh ink on the upper right corner of the letter, Wang Chong's heart began to tremble uncontrollably. Success! He really did find the meteoric metal. A surge of excitement surged through his heart. At this moment, Wang Chong's entire body was tense and his blood was on the verge of boiling. When cousin Wang Liang left, Wang Chong had already made an appointment with him. If he found nothing on this voyage, he would use ink to draw a small image of a stone on the lower left corner of the letter. And if he really did find the meteoric metal he had guessed, then he would draw a black flame on the upper right corner of the last page of the letter. His cousin had found it. Just as he had guessed, he had found the meteoric metal that no one cared about in those islands. In another space-time, they would become famous because of the Malaysian sword, but in this world, no one cared about them. They were treasures that belonged to him alone. After more than a year, he finally had a foothold in this era and the strength to truly change it. Whoosh! Turning his head, Wang Chong gazed at the mountains. The winds howled and the snow fell even heavier. Helmsman, steer to the left. The river is frozen. Watch out for the ice. Sailor, be quick and nimble. Take in the 2 sails. We have a favorable wind at the moment, so there's no need for more sails. All sailors, get ready. Get ready to drop the anchor at any time. Everyone else, get into position. Cook, get ready to turn off the fire. Today, we'll spend the day ashore. Everyone, let's eat a good meal today. More than 10 days later, following a series of orders, the layers of ice shattered with a rumble. A huge ship that was like a heavy sword passed through layers upon layers of obstruction and landed in the harbor. Thud thud thud. 2 huge anchors weighing 600 to 700 kilograms were dropped from the left and right sides of the ship. The anchors broke through the ice and fell into the water, splashing white mist. 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships. As the first ship reached the shore of the harbor, the other ships also arrived in the harbor. The moment they reached the shore, the entire fleet burst into earth-shattering cheers. "We're back. We're finally back. Ha ha ha, I finally don't have to eat dirt anymore. Strong liquor, beautiful women, I'm going to have fun to my heart's content this time. Tonight, let's not go home until we're drunk. Okay." The entire fleet was cheering. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As rope and wooden ladders were thrown down from the side of the ship, sailors with rough skin and weathered faces climbed down from the ship with red faces. Some of the stronger ones even jumped down from above. Chapter 427. Everyone's faces were red from the cold, but their eyes were bright and excited. One cook, sailor, helmsman, guard, archer, one by one, they disembarked from the ship. Once everyone had left, a weather-beaten youth finally appeared on the first ship. This youth did not seem very old, but his eyes exuded the aura of a seasoned veteran. He did not look like a young man, but more like a middle-aged man of 30 or 40 with a story to tell. "I'm finally back." Standing on the high railing of the ship, Wang Liang looked down at the crowded, lively, harmonious, and united crew, and the familiar, empty harbor. He exhaled a breath of cold air, his mind filled with emotion. It had only been a little more than half a year since he had set out, but to him, it had been as long as a lifetime. On this adventure, he had experienced far too much and seen far too much. Taking in a deep breath of cold air, Wang Liang raised his robe and stepped onto the wooden gangway, descending from the ship. The wooden gangway creaked under his feet, each creak so clear and loud that it felt like it was right next to his ear. "Captain! Captain! Captain!" Seeing Wang Liang descend, all the sailors, guards, cooks, navigators, archers, crossbowmen, and lookouts in the harbor began to cheer. Their eyes were brimming with fanaticism and worship, as if the youth descending from the railing was some illustrious and influential personage. Wave after wave of cheers rose up, and not even the wind, snow, or bitter cold could stop them. Even the guards of the Wang clan seemed to have forgotten Wang Liang's identity. Just like everyone else, they sincerely regarded him as their most important captain. In their hearts, this identity of captain was clearly even more worthy of respect than Wang Liang's identity as young Master Liang. Finally leaving the fortress ship and stepping onto solid ground, Wang Liang finally gave his first speech since stepping onto the continent under the gazes of hundreds of people. "We're back. Just as I promised all of you. All of you will obtain what you want, wealth. Captain! Captain!" The originally excited crowd suddenly became even more fanatical. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that these were Wang Liang's most loyal followers and guards. Anyone, if they wanted to harm Wang Liang, they would tear them to pieces. Da. Just when the crowd was at its most excited, the clanging of hooves came from afar, breaking through the wind and snow, attracting everyone's attention. In the beginning, the sound of the horses' hooves was faint, but very quickly, it became rumbling, as if thousands of horses were galloping toward the harbor. "Look over there," someone suddenly said while pointing into the distance. In an instant, everyone noticed a mighty black torrent in the distance, heading in the direction of the harbor. Screech! At the very front of the group was a large golden eagle. Its voice was loud and clear, and its wings were like iron. It glided through the wind and snow, appearing extremely conspicuous. Below the golden eagle was a 16 or 17-year-old youth wearing a fox fur coat. He had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, and he was leading the way. Although he was young, the youth's every move and action had a kind of prestige that made people believe in him. Young Master. It's young Master Chong. In the crowd, the Wang clan guard was the first to recognize him. Soon, others recognized him as well. There were very few people in the capital who didn't know of the Wang clan's Qilin son. A significant portion of this crew had come for the youngest son of the Wang clan, young Master Chong. Of course, part of this was because of his reputation, but the main reason was the legendary Wuzi steel weapons of the capital and the wealth of this young Master Chong. Cousin, you're finally back. Wang Chong urged his horse forward, sending snow flying. In the freezing harbor and the frozen sea, Wang Chong immediately spotted Wang Liang at the very back of the group. Galloping through the crowd, Wang Chong dismounted from his horse, strode forward, and fiercely hugged his cousin. Ha ha ha, I'm back, Wang Liang also heartily laughed as he hugged Wang Chong back. Although they had suffered a lot during this adventure, and even narrowly escaped death, they had almost died on the sea. But now that he had come back alive, the person he was most grateful to was Wang Chong. If not for Wang Chong, he would never have been able to break out of the walls of the capital. Perhaps he would still be drifting about in the marketplace, acting as a bird and selling his toys. If not for Wang Chong, he would never have known that there was such a marvelous world outside of his home, such a vast ocean. If not for Wang Chong, he would never have realized that this was what he had always wanted in the depths of his heart. The current him was the real him. He didn't want that dull life. Even if he didn't have supreme martial arts, even if he didn't rely on the power of his clan, he could still rely on his own intelligence and ability to win the support and respect of others. Cousin, I didn't disappoint you. I've brought back what you wanted. Wang Liang loosened his grip and pointed at the large ships anchored in the harbor behind him. Countless people had died on this voyage, and they had experienced innumerable thunderstorms and hurricanes. But the greatest harvest was on the large ships behind him. Although Wang Chong had told him that they were meteoric metal, nothing had been verified. Whether or not so many people had died and so many hardships had been worth it would depend on Wang Chong's confirmation. Wang Chong also turned his head at Wang Liang's words. But Wang Chong wasn't looking at the railings of the ships, but at the railings. Compared to normal ships, the waterline of these ships was clearly much deeper. Cousin, you've worked hard. Leave these matters to others. We'll talk about it when we get back. You've been gone for so long this time, so I really want to hear about your experiences at sea. Wang Chong said. The Wang Liang in front of him was like a completely different person compared to when he had first set sail. The skin on his face, neck, and wrists was the dark red of being exposed to the scorching sun of the ocean. Moreover, his skin was rough and weather-beaten, nothing like the scion of a great clan. This steady and dignified appearance was something that Wang Chong would never have imagined at first. Even if Wang Liang hadn't said anything, Wang Chong could sense that many things had happened to Wang Liang on this voyage. Wait a moment. Wang Liang stopped Wang Chong. Under Wang Chong's flabbergasted gaze, after a few moments of silence, he pointed at the crew in front of him. These people followed me out to sea, and 9 out of 10 of them died. I promised them that once I returned, I would bestow upon them a great deal of wealth. Ha ha ha, so it's this. Relax, I've already prepared everything. Take a look at that. Wang Chong pointed behind him. Following the direction of Wang Chong's finger, he saw warhorses in teams of 2, carrying heavy and crude chests of copper as they galloped over. Wang Liang counted, 1 chest, 2 chests, 3 chests, there were more than 10 chests. Wang Chong snapped his fingers and gestured for them to proceed. A knight on horseback pulled out his treasured saber with a keng sound and chopped off the copper lock on the treasure chest. Then, he stretched out his hand and inserted it into the gap of the treasure chest's lid. With a forceful lift, a brilliant golden light burst out. The copper chest was filled to the brim with dazzling gold. Boom! The sight of these chests filled to the brim with gold once more caused the crew to excitedly cheer. A few of the more impatient ones even rushed over and pounced on them. Let's go. Wang Chong pulled over a horse. This time, Wang Liang did not refuse, jumping onto the horse's back. Behind him, Wang Chong snapped his fingers. All the guards of his clan, the guards of his big uncle, and the experts that Elder Hu and Elder Yi had transferred over hurriedly rushed toward the large ships behind them. Wang Chong was holding a welcoming dinner for Wang Liang in his own restaurant. The entire restaurant was empty, but the table was piled high with food and wine. After closing the doors and windows and lighting a few pots of charcoal, the interior of the room immediately became as different as night and day. Outside the room, the wind howled. The world was cold and snowy, but the room was warm. The two cousins, Wang Chong and Wang Liang, were sitting across from each other at the table. The eagle, with his eagle perched on his shoulder, sat on the side. Wang Liang took out warm wine from a nearby stove and poured a cup for himself and another for Wang Chong. Then, he added a large piece of steaming, soft, and delicious beef from the pot and began to chew on it. Not bad, very delicious. Wang Liang praised, and then he began to chew, pouring wine into his mouth as he ate. You didn't drink before? Wang Chong suddenly said as he looked at Wang Liang. The Wang Liang of the past would never have done this, but the current Wang Liang naturally did this. He was not like the scion of a great clan, but more like a standard sailor who had spent a long time at sea. Ha, if you had experienced what I experienced, you would have done the same. Wang Liang heartily laughed as he continued to chew on the beef and drink the warm wine. Just what happened? Wang Chong asked. He had been suppressing this question for a very long time. Wang Liang did not hesitate to recount his experiences on the sea. Even though Wang Chong had already expected this, he still couldn't help but be deeply moved by Wang Liang's story. The sea was an abyss. It was far from land, far from morality, infinitely close to the abyss of hell, a place that tested one's humanity to the extreme. In that place, Wang Liang had to face all sorts of problems, both external and internal. As Wang Liang drank, he played down his experiences. But when Wang Chong heard that the guards he had sent to protect Wang Liang had also turned traitor, he finally understood just how complicated the situation Wang Liang had faced was. Chapter 428. As Wang Liang spoke, even Wang Chong couldn't help but feel his heart tremble. In the face of the boundless ocean, the strength of a martial artist was insignificant. As he listened to Wang Liang, Wang Chong knew that he had probably underestimated the dangers of sailing on the ocean. Even at his worst, Wang Chong had never ventured out to sea. He had used the largest fortress ship, the most formidable clan guards, and the backing of the Wang clan. Wang Chong had believed that this would be enough for him to rest easy, but now that he thought about it, he realized that his thinking had been too simple. The ocean was not like the land. It changed at every moment. Falling from there, even the most powerful martial artist would only be able to walk a dead end. Not only that, besides the power of nature, one also had to contend with the complex nature of the human heart. When food was scarce, the conditions were harsh, and one could not see land for half a year or even longer, and one did not even know if one could return to land. These conditions were the most likely to provoke the ugly side of a person's heart. In the most dangerous moments, Wang Liang had even faced 3 or more factions at the same time, and each faction wanted to kill him and replace him. Even the cook on the ship had this thought. Everyone blamed him, complained about him, and everyone believed that it was his fault. They wanted to replace him and control the others in the fleet. There's one more thing that I want to tell you. The matter of the meteoric metal has already been exposed. Wang Liang suddenly said. What? Wang Chong's pupils constricted, and the chopsticks he had extended froze in the air. The meteoric metal was of great importance and could not be easily revealed to outsiders. Otherwise, the factions that had gone out to sea to fight for the meteoric metal would be as numerous as carps in the river. The meteoric metal was an existence that could rival the ore of Hyderabad. Moreover, there was not just 1 or 2 pieces of meteoric metal, but a large amount of it, exposed in the open on the archipelagos in the sea. This kind of secret was enough to deeply arouse the interest of any aristocratic family. It would also cause a frenzied bloodbath at sea. The secret of the Hyderabad ore had already been exposed, and it had even been discovered by the Yao clan and King Chi's men. If even the extraterrestrial meteoric iron of the outer islands were to be exposed just as it was discovered, it would be an enormous loss for him. But you don't have to worry, I've already taken care of it for you. No one else on the ship knows about it except me. Wang Liang took a sip of wine, raised his head, and casually said, "Are you done?" Wang Chong was stunned. "Hee, it's a long journey from the island to the mainland," Wang Liang lightly said. Wang Chong could smell the thick scent of blood in Wang Liang's voice. Raising his head to carefully examine this formerly idle cousin of his, Wang Chong realized that besides the rough and weather-beaten face, Wang Liang's eyes also contained a firmness and decisiveness that Wang Chong had never seen before. No. He had seen it before, back then, when the Wang clan had declined, when all its members were homeless and destitute, when they were at their lowest and most desperate, his weak-willed cousin had stepped forward, using his frail body to protect the entire clan. His cousin had had this exact expression on his face when he had been forced into desperate straits. No. Even his cousin from back then could not compare to the cousin sitting before him right now. Wang Chong truly found it difficult to imagine just what sort of tribulations had been required for his cousin to reach this level in just a little more than half a year. And just how many stories had been hidden beneath the surface of his casual appearance. I didn't expect it. Wang Chong mentally sighed, deeply moved. His cousin had matured. He had always wanted to help the people of his clan, help them grow, help them succeed. But he had not expected that the first person to mature would be none other than his cousin, Wang Liang. The current Wang Liang was as heavy as a rock, steady, determined, and decisive. He gave off the feeling that he could be trusted and relied on. Although his martial arts were not very strong, Wang Chong was well aware that this had never been his cousin Wang Liang's forte. The current Wang Liang had already reached the level that he had imagined, and he could truly stand on his own. Perhaps in the future, I can leave all the affairs of the clan to him. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he felt incredibly gratified. Although his cousin's current appearance was unbearably rough, completely lacking the appearance of that young and noble scion of the past. But this was the price one had to pay for growth. Compared to the price he might face in the future, this was already very small. You've worked hard this time. This restaurant belongs to our clan, and there's a washroom inside. I've already asked you to prepare a change of clothes for you. After you eat, take a bath, rest, and when you're refreshed, go see Aunt and Uncle. They've probably been waiting for you for a long time. Wang Chong said. Wang Liang nodded. I've been gone for so long this time, so I should also rest. In addition, without the monsoon, it'll be very difficult to get there. But we're such a big target this time that you'll definitely attract the attention of some people. In addition, I've already cleaned up all the people on the ship who have bad intentions. These people all have the backing of great clans, and they won't give up until they get it. I'm afraid that there will be an endless stream of people coming to investigate. Once the secret of the meteoric metal is exposed, the people heading overseas will be like a swarm of locusts. I feel that this is what you need to worry about. Wang Chong fell silent. There was no way to avoid this. The Wang clan had paid such a heavy price, spent millions of taels of gold, recruited so many people, organized such a massive fleet, and spent so much time. It would be strange if they didn't attract the attention of some people. There's no need to worry. I've already made preparations for this. Wang Chong indifferently said. Whether it was the Wang clan, his big uncle, or the Zhang clan, they were all too obvious a target. Thus, Wang Chong would never place the meteoric metal he had obtained overseas there. Wang Chong had already decided that he would first bring the meteoric metal to Deflecting Blade Manor one by one at night. With a top-class expert like Li Sai overseeing it, the meteoric metal would be safe for the time being. The fleet had only just returned, and it had attracted too much attention. After a while, things would calm down, and no one would pay too much attention to it. This matter would naturally pass. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to carry out his plan. Since you've already made preparations, I'm relieved. As for my crew, you don't need to worry. Not every sailor could remember the route they had sailed. Without my map, even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to find that place. Moreover, most of them only know that we're going to the island to find some sort of massive rock, but they have no idea what it's used for. Even if some people sneak a look behind my back and discover that it's wrapped in metal, they definitely won't know that it's meteoric metal. In addition, I'll keep them in check for a while. Wang Liang's words had a dignified air to them. Wang Chong nodded, stood up, and said no more. His cousin's thoughts were quite meticulous, so there was no need for him to say anything more. From now on, he finally had another person in the Wang clan that he could discuss matters with. Cousin. Just when Wang Chong was prepared to leave, a voice came from behind him. Wang Liang put down his wine cup and chopsticks, his eyes unblinking as he stared at Wang Chong. There was a hint of something special in his eyes. That meteoric metal, just what are you planning to do with it? Don't tell me that you're just using it for business. Wang Chong froze at these words, and then he finally turned around. It was like he was meeting his cousin for the first time. He had done so many things since his reincarnation. Everyone was just surprised by his performance, or perhaps his abilities. Only his cousin, Wang Liang, was the first person to ask why and what he was planning to do. There was no doubt that this overseas trip had made him much more mature and enlightened him on many things. In the future, you'll know. Wang Chong chuckled and turned his head. He walked down the stairs, passed through the gate, and vanished into the snow outside. Behind him, Wang Liang froze for a moment, and then he smiled. There were times when not denying was admitting, and not answering was answering. From Wang Chong's words, Wang Liang had confirmed part of his conjecture. His feeling had not been wrong. This cousin really was planning something. The Hyderabad or the meteoric metal. Although he had matured a lot and understood the human heart and nature, his cousin was still shrouded in mystery. There were far too many inexplicable things about him. But no matter what he was doing, what he wanted to do, or what he was planning, there was one thing that Wang Liang could be sure of: he had always been protecting the clan. He bore no malice toward the clan. That was enough. Thus, no matter what he wanted to do, even if he wanted to usurp the throne, Wang Liang had no intention of stopping him, nor would he stop him. What a heavy snowfall! Hearing the howling wind outside, Wang Liang walked over with a cup of warm wine and pushed open the window. Outside the window, a slender figure walked alone on the long and empty street, quickly vanishing into the wind and snow. Time passed in a flash. Rumble. A slender figure sat cross-legged on the summit of the snow-capped mountain. Along with the rumbling of thunder, heaven and earth distorted. A chaotic, vast, and frightening power of heaven and earth, which made one's mind tremble, was unstoppable. Like a flood, it swept across the white mountain top. Creak. The layers of snow, shaken by this energy, rustled down. And at this moment, a voice that had not been heard for a long time came to Wang Chong's ear. Congratulations to user for overcoming the third world constraint. Consumed 40 points of destiny energy. Remaining destiny energy, 24 points. Next world constraint, 9 months from now. Consumed 60 points of destiny energy. In addition, with each world constraint, user's gold organs and flood dragon bone will be strengthened. The degree of strengthening is directly proportional to the number of times. Chapter 429. The third world constraint had finally been successfully passed. Streams of energy breathed in from the depths of spacetime, pouring into his mind and body. In this short period of time, Wang Chong sensed that his strength and mental energy had both grown significantly. I've finally passed the world constraint. Wang Chong quietly said to himself, his heart brimming with joy. This binding and repulsive force from the world was like a bomb. A single misstep could result in death. Now, he had finally passed it. Standing up from the ground, Wang Chong stretched his body. Cack-lack. A series of crisp sounds came from his body, and at the same time, an enormous qi was released from Wang Chong's body. This qi broke through from the origin energy realm to the true martial realm, then from Tier 1, Tier 2, all the way to Tier 3 of the true martial realm. After 20-some days of cultivation, the pills that Liu Zhizhang had given him, and the backlash from passing the third world constraint, Wang Chong had finally smoothly stepped into Tier 3 of the true martial realm. 2 more tiers and I'll reach Tier 5 of the true martial realm, and then I can advance to the second tier of the Halo of Dusk Stallion. Wang Chong's eyes brightened as he inwardly rejoiced. The most powerful aspect of the Halo of Dusk Stallion was not the increase in strength it could bring, but its strategic use on the battlefield. A level 2 Halo of Dusk Stallion meant that as long as one was within the range of the Halo, all warriors would receive the blessing of the Halo and directly advance to Tier 2 of the true martial realm. Their strength, speed, and dexterity would all rise to this level. This sort of overall improvement was extremely astonishing. Slowly ending his cultivation on the summit of the mountain, Wang Chong exhaled a cold breath. With a thought, he quickly focused his mind on the Stone of Destiny in his mind. The longer one stayed in this world, the more severe the world constraint and the backlash would be. Wang Chong had long since gotten used to this. But this time, while resisting the power of the world constraint, Wang Chong realized that the Stone of Destiny was suddenly a little different. The time interval has been extended to 9 months, but the amount of destiny energy consumed is not proportional. This means that in the future, the repulsion from the world will increase at an irregular pace. In other words, I will need to consume more and more destiny energy in the future. Wang Chong lowered his head, his eyes flashing rapidly. From this change in the world constraint, Wang Chong quickly noticed something that was hard to notice. Although 60 points of destiny energy was a lot, with 9 months of buffer time, it should be enough. What really caught Wang Chong's attention was the content mentioned later: every time I pass the world restraint, the gold liquid organs and the flood dragon bones abilities will be strengthened. Moreover, the degree of strengthening is proportional to the number of times. This kind of content had never been published before. The other items were one thing, but the gold organs and the flood dragon bone were extremely important to him. There was basically no way to improve the former, while the latter was extremely difficult. The Jiao bone was a type of dragon bone, and it was the lowest level of dragon bone. Once a warrior reached this level of cultivation, it would become more and more difficult to improve, even if they had extraordinary talent. For the dragon bone level of bone, the difficulty of each level was several times, or even more than 10 times. Even though Wang Chong had the memories of 2 lives, he did not have any good ideas. Otherwise, he would not have stopped at the Saint Martial realm in his previous life and not advanced any further. If he could safely pass the world repulsion and world constraint, he would be able to improve the Jiao bone once. This was definitely an unexpected gain. Perhaps I can use this to reach a level I never reached in my previous life. At this moment, Wang Chong had to admit that he was tempted. There were challenges, but there were also rewards. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. This seemed to be the hidden rule of this mysterious Stone of Destiny. Of course, if he failed, there would probably be a heavy punishment. Whoosh! While he was deep in thought, a sudden rustling sound came from above. Wang Chong looked up and saw a snow-white falcon flapping its wings, breaking through the snow and flying down from the sky. It's the eagle. With a thought, Wang Chong quickly extended an arm. There was no way that the eagle did not know that he was training here. If there was nothing important, the eagle would never disturb him. Catching the snow falcon, Wang Chong took the letter from its leggings. With just a glance, his heart sank. If you want to leave, I can't stop you. With a long sigh, Wang Chong jumped down from the top of the snowy mountain. Using the phantom steps, he dashed down the mountain like a phantom, leaving only shallow footprints wherever he went. With the advancement of his martial arts, Wang Chong's phantom steps had improved as well. Even though he had yet to reach the level of leaving no trace on the snow, if one did not pay close attention, they would look like the footprints of a rabbit. So, several dozen zhang later, Wang Chong leaped onto a large tree. Shaking off the snow, Wang Chong quickly disappeared into the distance. By the time Wang Chong returned to Deflecting Blade Mountain, the entire Deflecting Blade Manor was silent. Other than the 20 guards, there were only a few students. In the cold of winter, Deflecting Blade Manor was much quieter than usual. Wang Chong passed through the high gates and creaked up the red sandalwood spiral staircase. When he returned to the pavilion, he immediately saw a stalwart figure more than 2 meters tall standing by the door. This figure was pacing back and forth as if he had been waiting for a long time, his mind full of worries. In the entire Deflecting Blade Manor, only Li Sai had such a tall figure. It was snowing heavily, and the mountains were covered in silver. It was a scene of winter. But Wang Chong knew that spring would begin soon. When the snow melted and the trees sprouted, the annual mobilization of troops would begin. If Li Sai wanted to head to the western regions and establish his career, this was the best opportunity. Only by making preparations in advance would he be able to make it in time. It was clear that Li Sai could not wait any longer. From the dark circles under his eyes, it was clear that he had not slept well for some time. "Come in," Wang Chong said, opened the door, and walked in. Although he was extremely reluctant to let the invincible great general slip away from his grasp, Wang Chong was able to accept the fact that the situation had come to an end. Those who want to leave can't be stopped, and those who want to stay can't be beaten away. Li Sai's personality clearly determined that he would not easily become a servant or be ordered around by anyone. Even if Wang Chong was a young master of a clan of generals and ministers, he would not be able to order him around. Wang Chong lightly pulled on the bell in the room, a trick he had learned from the other world. Soon, someone knocked on the door and brought over a pot of steaming hot tea. Wang Chong poured a cup for himself and one for Li Sai. "Sit." Wang Chong pointed to the opposite side of the table. Li Sai seemed to have a lot on his mind. He took the tea, but he did not sit down. Wang Chong did not mind. After sitting down, he took out a letter he had prepared beforehand from the drawer under the table and tossed it over to Li Sai. "I've already prepared it. Take it." "Ah. What?" Li Sai was taken aback, as if he had just woken up from a dream. "A letter. Didn't you want to go to the western regions? I've already prepared it for you. On it are the seals of my big uncle and the King of Song, as well as the official seal of the Bureau of Military Personnel. If you take this to the Bureau of Military Personnel, you won't need to pass through the Biting Protectorate. You can head directly to the Anxi Protectorate and fulfill your long-cherished wish," Wang Chong said. This time, it was his turn to be astonished. Li Sai's reaction was not what he had expected. Wang Chong still remembered how Li Sai had looked when he first arrived. His aura had threatened to tear down his Deflecting Blade Manor. Now that he had finally fulfilled his long-cherished wish, shouldn't he be ecstatic? "Who said that I called you here for this?" Li Sai lowered his head to look at the letter on the table, a bizarre expression on his face. "Is that not the case?" Wang Chong was astonished. "I didn't say that." Li Sai finally regained his composure. "I called you here because I have something to ask you." "Ask me." Wang Chong was flabbergasted. Raising his head to look at this man who was even taller and more muscular than Xiong Pai, Wang Chong suddenly realized that he had been mistaken. "What do you want to ask?" Wang Chong asked in surprise. He was truly baffled. Just what sort of question could be more important than a letter recommending Li Sai to the Anxi Protectorate? And just what was it that made him wait at his door, so worried that he even had the eagle use a snow falcon to inform him to return? "Let me ask you, just what is your Wang clan doing?" Li Sai suddenly glared at Wang Chong as he spoke harshly. His eyes were as sharp as swords, a stark contrast to his previous demeanor. "What is it that we're doing?" Wang Chong was flabbergasted. Li Sai's words had come so suddenly that not even he had been able to react, unable to follow his train of thought. 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore, enough meteoric metal to forge several thousand sets of armor. Don't tell me that this is just ordinary ore, and there are also hundreds of martial arts manuals and this deflecting blade manor. Just what is your Wang clan planning to do by preparing so many strategic resources? Since ancient times, conspiring to seize the throne and raising troops in rebellion have never met with a good end. The world is at peace and the common people live in peace. I, Li Sai, am a man of indomitable spirit, and I will never do anything that goes against the Tao or helps the wicked. If your Wang clan harbors evil intentions, Li Sai will be the first to kill you, and then I will destroy your Wang clan." The veins on Li Sai's forehead were bulging, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. His fierce expression and furious expression made him seem like a fearsome guardian deity of karmic fire. These abrupt words left Wang Chong completely dumbfounded. Wang Chong had never imagined that the eagle would urgently call him back and say that Li Sai wanted to see him for this reason. Li Sai had spent several months in deflecting Blade Manor, seeing his Hyderabad ore, seeing his meteoric metal, and seeing his transcribed martial arts manuals. After knowing so many of his secrets, this scoundrel actually believed that he was plotting a rebellion. After observing him for several months, this future invincible great general of the Tang dynasty actually believed that he harbored evil intentions and that the Wang clan was plotting a rebellion. No matter how magnanimous Wang Chong was, he could never have imagined that this future invincible great general would be so worried and restless over this matter. Chapter 430. Ha ha ha, you think I want to rebel? Wang Chong looked at Li Sai, finally unable to restrain his laughter. Is that not the case? Li Sai sternly said. His expression was serious, not the slightest hint that he was joking. When he had first arrived, he had known almost nothing about the capital, not even who Wang Chong was. He had believed that some scoundrel or young master of a great clan wanted to transfer him to his side so that he could serve him as a servant and serve him. But no matter how unfamiliar Li Sai was with the capital, the months he had spent in the capital were enough for him to understand a few crucial matters. The Wang clan of the capital where Wang Chong had appeared was a clan of ministers and generals. In the Tang dynasty, it was definitely one of the most powerful nobles. The Hyderabad ore that Wang Chong had purchased from Sindhu was priceless. The Wuxi steel weapons forged from it could cut through metal and were unstoppable. In the capital, the cheapest Wuxi steel weapon could sell for 70 to 80,000 taels of gold, an astronomical price that not even Li Sai could afford. But this was not the crucial point. The crucial point was the sharpness of this weapon. In the battle against the dragon bandits Black Dragon Zhao, Li Sai had experienced the fearsomeness of this weapon for the first time. His own strength was one of the reasons that he had been able to single-handedly challenge the tens of thousands of dragon bandits, but Li Sai was well aware that another important reason was the Wuxi steel weapon that Wang Chong had forged for him. Not a single member of the dragon bandits had been a match for him. In front of that demonic Wuxi steel weapon, everyone and their horses were like paper, easily cut in two. And not even the dragon bandits Black Dragon Zhao had been able to block that slash. And now, Wang Chong had obtained 1,000 June of Hyderabad ore. Such a large number was enough to create a small army of 1,000 people. With the terrifying sharpness of the Wuzi steel weapons, no one knew better than him what it meant to have such an army on the battlefield. Not to mention that Wang Chong had somehow gotten his hands on so many extraterrestrial meteoric iron and martial arts manuals. Any one of these three types was not something that could be easily obtained by an ordinary aristocratic family. But the Wang clan had gathered all three. In the capital, this was a force that played a decisive role. If the Wang family had any ulterior motives, within the imperial capital, such a secret force was fully qualified to influence the situation and launch a coup in the imperial court. Li Sai did want to go to the western regions to make a name for himself, but he couldn't just sit back and watch such a powerful force grow under his nose and ignore it. Moreover, Wang Chong was already recruiting. At the very least, in his eyes, this deflecting blade manner was the Wang clan's recruiting. Seeing Li Sai's serious expression, Wang Chong finally put on a serious expression. Li Sai was not a strategist. The reason he could become famous was because of his powerful strength and personal loyalty, as well as the charisma brought about by his pure love for the country. No matter what the truth was, there was no doubt that Li Sai was already suspicious of him. No. Wang Chong met Li Sai's gaze and straightforwardly said. The Wang clan will not, nor does it need to, have any scheme. Moreover, if the Wang clan really did have some scheme, do you think that I would so easily let an outsider know of such an important matter? In addition, the matter of the Hyderabad ore is no longer a secret in the capital. You know of it and the Yao clan knows of it. Do you think that the Holy Emperor doesn't know of it? If the Wang clan really did have any intentions of disloyalty, do you think that the Holy Emperor would have kept us alive until now? Whether it's the Hyderabad ore or the meteoric metal you brought in, these are all top-class strategic resources. If the Wang clan doesn't have any intentions of disloyalty, why are you buying so many top-class strategic resources? This is already beyond the scope of a clan's normal operations and defense. Li Sai harshly said, his sharp gaze piercing straight into Wang Chong's heart, seemingly peering into the depths of his soul. The room instantly fell into a stifling silence. Wang Chong said nothing. Li Sai was clearly much smarter than he had imagined. The Hyderabad ore, the meteoric metal, deflecting blade manner, the spirit vein, ever since his reincarnation, he had done far, far too much. This was not the first time since his reincarnation that someone had sensed some of his intentions. The more one interacted with his circle, the more one understood, the more one would be able to sense something. Wang Chong had no hopes of making Li Sai believe all of his words like a fool. Wang Chong was only considering whether he should tell him or not. Li Sai, can you tell me why you insist on going to Anxi? Wang Chong suddenly said. Li Sai froze. He could clearly sense that Wang Chong's attitude and tone were completely different from before, as if he had become a completely different person. This was an extremely strange feeling. But he could see the seriousness in Wang Chong's eyes, and this attitude had unwittingly affected Li Sai. Is there even a need to say it? A man of character should set his sights on the four corners of the world. What sort of achievements can a man make if he just stays in the interior? Li Sai said without hesitation. Although he found Wang Chong's attitude rather strange, he had already considered this point for a very long time, so there was no need to think too much about it. If anyone asked, he could calmly and proudly state his attitude. A man of character should set his sights on the four corners of the world. This was how it should be, so there was nothing more to say. Ha! That's not the real reason. It was the same for the Biting Protectorate, so why did he have to go to Anxi? If you want to go to war, wouldn't the Anong Protectorate be the same? Wang Chong shook his head. Of course it's different. Li Sai didn't even think before interrupting Wang Chong. In terms of opportunities to make a name for oneself, no place can compare to the Anxi Protectorate. Moreover, not even the Anong Protectorate can compare to Anxi. A man of character should go to the most dangerous places. Only then can he prove himself. So you want to go to the western regions because it's more dangerous? Wang Chong said. You can say that. Li Sai did not deny it. Then have you ever thought about why that place is dangerous? This question instantly left Li Sai dumbfounded. Before this, he had only wanted to go to the Anxi Protectorate, which was the most dangerous and battle-ridden place in the western regions. He had truly never thought about anything else. If the Tang dynasty is at peace and the world is at peace, would you still need to go there? Wang Chong continued to ask. What do you want to say? I just want to tell you that you are far from the only person in this world preparing for war. Wang Chong indifferently said. The room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Li Sai stared at Wang Chong in disbelief, acting like he was meeting him for the first time. When he had first arrived at the capital, Li Sai's impression of Wang Chong had been that he was a willful and reckless hedonistic scion of a wealthy family. This period of time had greatly changed Li Sai's impression of Wang Chong, and he had come to realize that there were many different and astonishing aspects about him. But at this moment, Wang Chong's few words had caused Li Sai to realize that he had still been far underestimating this youth. If he was really like what she thought or what he said, then this young man was definitely worthy of everyone's respect. His view of him had probably been gravely mistaken. The room was quiet as the two looked at each other, neither of them speaking. Wang Chong, did you really mean what you said just now? Li Sai sternly said. The gods can bear witness, the heavens can bear witness. Wang Chong sternly said. Li Sai's lips moved, but he couldn't say a word. Li Sai. Wang Chong knew that this was his last chance to convince Li Sai. His plan was still lacking a powerful figure. His own strength alone was not enough. If he had an invincible great general like Li Sai to assist him, his plan would have twice the result with half the effort. In that future crisis, his strength alone was too limited, and he had far too many things to do. He needed a powerful figure to replace him and lead the army in terms of martial strength. As for himself, Wang Chong had always been well aware that his greatest advantage was not in martial strength, but in strategy and the art of war. And this did not require great strength. No matter what, I have to try. As Wang Chong looked at Li Sai, an intense thought emerged in his mind. Li Sai, the western regions are even more dangerous, and there are battles to be fought in the western regions. You've only seen the surface. The current empire is no longer the empire of the past, and the foreign countries are no longer the foreign countries of the past. They have absorbed nourishment from the Tang dynasty and strengthened themselves. The Goguryeo Empire, the Eastern and Western Turkic Khaganates, the Uzun Empire, the Mengshi-Zhao Empire, the various countries of the western regions, and even further west, the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu, these are all threats to the empire. In the western regions, there are the various countries of the western regions, the Uzun Empire, and the Abbasid Caliphate and Karak-Spazinu that we have never interacted with before. The situation is extremely complicated, and the imperial court's military strength is weak there. This is the reason why the western regions are constantly at war and more dangerous than the other regions. But Li Sai, you don't know that the greatest threat to the empire in the future is not in the western regions. Then where is it? Li Sai's heart jolted, and he almost subconsciously blurted out. Qi. Wang Chong suddenly flicked a finger, and a sharp sword qi flew through the air. The sword qi did not cut through the scroll on the wall, but it accurately cut through the red rope binding the scroll. Even Li Sai couldn't help but be surprised by this meticulous control. Whoosh! The scroll unfurled, and under Li Sai's surprised gaze, a massive map of the Tang dynasty immediately appeared on the wall behind him. Qi! Wang Chong flicked a second sword qi, accurately piercing through the southwest corner of the Tang dynasty map, the place where the Uzun and Mengshi-Zhao met. Here. Wang Chong calmly said, and as he spoke, he slowly drew back his finger. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.